to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Dubes & Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Dubes & Kerr.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
A very good afternoon, everybody. You're with me, Patrick Christys, on GB News. Now, coming up over the course of the next 3 big hours, the Archbishop of Canterbury has launched another stinging attack on the government's migration policies. Justin Welby argued the Rwanda plan will be a failure and should be scrapped. So, does the Archbishop actually have a point? Should he even be wading in on political issues? There'll be strong views on either side of that debate. The fallout continues as well from the Duke and Duchess of Sussex's Netflix documentary, with calls for their royal titles now to be revoked. In fact, that's even going to be discussed in Parliament. Even the US media don't seem to be on their side anymore. You hate to see it, don't you? We will bring you the results of a GB News People's Poll to find out what you made of the Sussex's latest tell-all. And as always, get in touch. GB Views at gbnews.uk on social media. I will share your thoughts throughout the show. Two big ones for you there. Should the Archbishop be getting involved in migration?
I'm Rhiannon Jones in the GB newsroom.
The Chancellor's announced plans to overhaul the British financial sector by pledging to review and replace hundreds of pages of EU regulations. Dubbed the Edinburgh Reforms, Jeremy Hunt says Brexit has provided a golden opportunity to reshape the rules. More than 30 regulatory changes have been unveiled, including reversing some measures.
Much healthier financially since 2008. We put in place a process so that financial issues can be resolved, which we didn't have before. But we also want to make sure they can compete with other financial centres, whether it's the United States or Asia. And Scotland is in a fantastic place to do that, and that's why these reforms will make a big difference.
The Chancellor Jeremy Hunt speaking there. Rishi Sunak, meanwhile... No, we are moving on to another story. Speaking at the RAF Congsbury in Lincolnshire, Rishi Sunak was excited about the launch of a new generation fighter jet. Britain will work with Italy and Japan to develop Tempest. It's designed to replace the Typhoon jet and is expected to take to the skies by 2035. The Prime Minister says the joint venture aims to create thousands of UK jobs and strengthen security ties. More than 115,000 Royal Mail staff have walked out today in a new wave of strikes in the run-up to Christmas in an ongoing row over pay and conditions. Thousands have gathered at a rally outside Parliament in central London this afternoon. Members of the Communication Workers Union will strike again on Sunday, with further action planned throughout the month, including on Christmas Eve. Royal Mail warns the action will affect deliveries across the UK. Customers are being advised to post Christmas mail earlier than usual this year.
We do our bit and we like that, that's what we do. We are Royal Mail, so we're here to protect our jobs.
If we don't stand today and fight that destruction of Royal Mail, not only will we not have a job, but the public won't have a service.
It's a question of whose side are you on? Are you on the union side or are you on the disgusting Tory side? There's no middle way today, and this crowd is telling us that.
Well, meanwhile, thousands of soldiers are preparing to cover for other workers striking this Christmas period. Troops are already in training at some British ports and airports. Border Force staff at Gatwick, Heathrow and Manchester airports, among others, will strike for 8 days from December the 23rd through to New Year's Eve. Travellers hoping to head abroad over the Christmas period have been told to think carefully about their plans. 5 men have been jailed for smuggling Kurdish migrants into the UK, hidden in the back of lorries. They've been jailed for a total of 24 years between them for running a large-scale people smuggling ring. The National Crime Agency says the gang leader Tariq Namik was in charge of transporting migrants from Iraq and Iran and has connections with other people smugglers overseas. A fuel poverty charity is warning the rising cost of living and cold weather will leave millions struggling this winter. National Energy Action says people are facing a choice of either accruing huge debt or living in unheated homes. It comes as the UK Health Security Agency issues a level 3 cold weather alert for England, meaning it's likely to affect people's health significantly. The Met Office is warning of up to 4 inches of snow in London and the southeast this weekend. And that is the average cost of renting a property is up by £117 a month on last year. That's according to Zoopla. The property website's reporting a typical month's rent is at almost £1,100. That's roughly 35% of the average income of a single earner. London, Manchester and Glasgow have all seen particularly sharp increases in the last year. A serving Met police officer has been charged with 2 counts of rape. PC Rupert Edwards is alleged to have carried out the offences in Lambeth and Surrey earlier this year whilst off duty. He was first arrested back in September and suspended. He's due to appear at Westminster Magistrates Court today. And the King and Queen Consort visited Welsh football team Wrexham AFC today, along with Hollywood co-owners Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney. The club, which was bought by the actors last year, is one of 8 locations across the country to gain city status this summer. The Royals met and talked to players and other members of staff during their tour of the stadium. This is GB News. We'll bring you more as it happens now, though. Back to Patrick.
welcome back, everybody. Let's get stuck straight in, shall we? So the immigration crisis escalated today after the Archbishop of Canterbury described the government's Rwanda policy as cruelty. Speaking in the House of Lords, Justin Welby warned against harmful rhetoric. Let's just have a little look and a listen to what he had to say.
The complaint I make is not about Rwanda, a country I know well, and in which there is much that I admire. A compassionate policy is one that recognises we have a share of global responsibility. Outsourcing our share creates more opportunities for people smugglers to operate in and around Rwanda. It's not a solution, it's a mistake, and it will be a failure. When migrants arrive here, our system is grossly wasteful in both human and financial terms. Control has become cruelty. Staggering inefficiencies by successive governments trap people in limbo at incredible expense to the taxpayer, in the system for years, unable to build a life or to contribute to our society.
OK, well, joining me now is Ben Habib, former Brexit Party MEP, and Peter Edwards as well, former editor of Labour List. I'm going to ask you both the same question straight off the jump. Ben, I'll start with you. Is it ungodly to want to deport asylum seekers or have them processed elsewhere?
No, not at all. I mean, you know, the Channel migrants, which I assume we're talking about, have entered this country illegally. And contrary to what Welby said, they've come from a safe country. There's no requirement for compassion here. There's a requirement for the enforcement of British borders and British laws. They've come from France, for goodness sake. These people they're not coming to the United Kingdom because they're fleeing Libya or Iraq or some other war-torn zone. They're already safe, and we've got to keep that foremost in our minds.
Okay.
And as I've said before, Patrick, you know, we've got to develop border control ahead of a deportation policy. Everyone in this country, including, if you don't mind me saying so, GBNews, discusses the migrant crisis through the prism of deportation. Deportation is what you need when border control has gone wrong. These people mustn't be allowed to enter the United Kingdom in the first place.
All right, I want to come on to that, Ben, so stay where you are. Peter, you've had a little bit of time to think about your answer for this question. Peter Edwards, former editor of Labour List. Is it ungodly? I mean, I don't think it says anywhere in the Bible that if you pay a people smuggler to come from a safe country to another country, you need to be looked after, does it?
Well, I think it's not my role to specify what's godly and ungodly, but I completely support Archbishop Justin, not just on the content, where I actually happen to think that he's right, but more broadly, his right to speak out, because he did say successive governments. He's not partisan, he's not party political. Just as the Archbishop of Canterbury criticised the government in the 80s under Thatcher and various things carried out by Tony Blair in the 2000s, it's completely right that the Archbishop speaks out now, but I do agree with him on the substance as well.
OK. Ben, I was driving back quite late last night, actually. It was about 10 or 11 p.m, and I had a look down at my temperature gauge, and it said -5 through the kind of rural area I was driving through. And I couldn't help but feel initially very lucky that I was going to get back to a nice warm flat. I could afford to turn the heating on, thankfully. But I can also help but think about the people out on the streets at the minute. And if we have got hotel rooms available for people who are coming across the Channel, should we not be doing more to house some people who are already here as well? And if deporting some people means that we can do that, is there any justification for it?
Well, I mean, absolutely right. You know, you have to look after your own before you look after people who've illegally entered the country. And we have a massive cost of living crisis, remember. We're spending $5 million a day on accommodation for these people who've entered our country illegally. And you can double that when you take into account free healthcare, free dental care, cash in their pockets, and all the other benefits they get. So we're talking about something like £5 billion a year for those people who've already entered the country. Remember, that was the tax cut that Liz Truss wanted to give working class people. And we can't do that. But that's been removed from us because of the problems, the financial state of the country. So here we are, you know, feather nesting these people that have entered the UK illegally. And it's just got to stop. And I reiterate, they're coming from France. They're not coming from war-torn zones.
Yeah, and Peter, do you think that actually the likes of Justin Welby and indeed religious representatives anywhere could be doing a bit more to maybe put their money where their mouth is? If what he's saying is that he doesn't believe that deportation is right or outsourcing our responsibilities is right, if he thinks we've got a broken system, I mean, maybe things like the church could do more to fund getting more border force officers in or something along those lines.
Well, I didn't hear all of Ben's answer, but I don't think the church can fund that because, one, it's the government's job to keep the borders safe. I do go to church every week and actually know the church has a lot of assets, but it doesn't have a particularly high income. And that's why clergy are paid such modest sums and always have been. I want to pick up on one other point very briefly, which is Ben tried to make a nuanced argument, and that's completely within his rights to do so. But any of that nuance has been lost in the comments by Suella Braverman when you're talking about an invasion of foreigners coming to British shores. There's no nuance, complexity or thought in that argument. It's just, I'm afraid it's whipping up xenophobia. And I think, obviously there is some political game at play. And it's very sad because this is not a matter of pure economics. It's a matter of human dignity and in some case, human existence.
Ben, I'll let you come back to that. Do you think that Suella Braverman was whipping up xenophobia?
The number of people coming across the channel the way that they're coming, unchecked, aided by the French Navy, met by border force, ferried to the United Kingdom in large numbers and growing because they're encouraged to make that journey as a result of the support we give them to make the journey in the first place and then the support we give them when they get here. We've got a completely open border. We don't have border controls. And I reiterate yet again, they're coming from France. They're not coming from a war-torn zone. We have specific programs in the United Kingdom which entitle people in war-torn zones to make applications through legal processes. That's what they should do. They shouldn't enter the country illegally.
Some would say, Peter, that maybe the church has veered from its traditional message in recent years. More fundamentalist individuals would probably say that. But just in terms of, he's probably bracketing it up as love and godliness and all of this stuff, isn't it? Do you think the reality is that Welby just wants to let everyone in? He doesn't believe in borders?
No, not at all. And if there's one thing the church would stand for, it's the rule of law. The church has not said, and the Archbishop has not said people should break the law. He said he wants a law that's set up in a fair and compassionate way. And clearly, when you're lumping people together under headlines like invasion, we're not doing that. But I'd make another point very briefly, which is the church wants people to act within the law. But for 2,000 years, the church has spoken up for people that are on the margins of society. You don't have to be under immediate threat of death under a despot to be on the margins of society. I think we'd agree people on the boat arriving from France or from Africa are poor, cold, hungry and alone. It's entirely right the church stands up for people
Any argument, just Peter, just very quickly on this, any truck to say, well, they've put themselves in that situation?
Absolutely right.
People do these things out of desperation.
Pete, so you just think everyone blanketly... All right. Go on, Ben.
They can't be desperate. They're in France.
OK. All right, there we go. Well, look, thank you very much, both of you. It's great to have you both on. A good start to that show. We're going to be discussing this throughout, so it's nice to have that kind of balanced start to it. We're going to be discussing it throughout with various different religious leaders as well, so we'll get that take on it. Ben Habib there, former Brexit Party MEP, and Peter Edwards, former editor of Labour List. It has already popped off in the inbox, by the way, ladies and gentlemen. GBViews at gbnews.uk. Make sure that you do get in touch on this particular issue. Do you think it's unchristian? Do you think it's ungodly or unreligious, immoral is another way of putting it, maybe, if you're not that way inclined, that we should be outsourcing our responsibilities, I'm doing a lot of air quoting now for people who are listening on radio, by the way, to countries like Rwanda? Should we be deporting people over there? Do you think we should be deporting anyone at all? I can't help but feel, I don't know about you, I can't help but feel as though the likes of Justin Welby, maybe as virtuous as he may well be, realistically would not want any borders and probably would want to allow everybody to come in, although whether or not the demographics of what he'd see before him after that would suit his religious agenda, I'm not quite sure. GBViews at gbnews.uk, get those views coming in. Moving on to another fan favourite here, I would like to yet again point out, I have continued to resist, well, I was going to say the urge, the lack of urge, but the public pressure, the media pressure to actually watch a single second of Harry and Meghan's Netflix bombshell Netflix docuseries, apart from the ones that I want to say paid to listen to it on this show, I'll just say it. Anyway, right, so the first 3 episodes of Harry and Meghan's bombshell Netflix docuseries dropped yesterday. Oh, here it comes, right on cue. Let's have a little taster.
Equally, what's most important for the two of us is to make sure that we don't repeat the same mistakes that perhaps our parents made. I think most kids who are the product of divorced parents have a lot in common.
Yes, well, there we go. The reason why we had that People's Poll sting is because we have a People's Poll. There's been quite a lot of reaction, to say the least, some backlash against the couple's revelations. In fact, it's almost universal backlash. You hate to see it. But what do you think about Harry and Meghan? Let's have a look now at the latest GB News People's Poll. So, we asked if you thought Harry and Meghan should be banned from the King's coronation. 1 in 4 of you said yes, they should. When asked who you believe represents the values of Britain, more than 50% said Prince William and Catherine over Harry and Meghan, who were only supported by 7% of the country. Shocking stats there. Meanwhile, only 16% completely agree with Lady Susan Hussey resigning, while 33% completely agree that she should have gone. So, in light of these results, what else has been coming out from that Harry and Meghan Netflix docuseries? Who better to discuss it? We managed to free the cinema one yesterday. Bless him. GB News' very own royal reporter Cameron Walker was shackled to a cinema chair yesterday to what had his eyes peeled open like this, and he had to watch 3 episodes back to back to back of Harry and Meghan's diatribe. What's the latest fallout/reaction? From what I can gather on social media, it seems to be to do with a curtsy.
That seems to be a big point here. For those of you who have not seen the clip, Meghan, hello. So Meghan does a gesture where she's describing meeting the late Queen for the first time, and she does a very, very low bow, which many people believe is mocking, is parodying the British culture of the royal family and curtsying in particular. Now, clearly that has not gone down very well on social media with Brits alike, and many people are saying, actually, that if a British person made a parody gesture against another country's culture, then they'd be perceived as racist.
Yeah.
So why does it not work both ways?
It's interesting, actually, and I can't help but notice or wonder even whether or not Meghan maybe did meet a variety of different dignitaries from a variety of different countries, and some of those times there, they have a different way of greeting. I know the Maori culture, for example, they kind of do the nose-to-nose thing. I bet she wouldn't have dared to have criticised that, but there we go. Now, the kind of reviews that we've seen so far, I couldn't help but notice that even in America, it's not been overly popular, I don't think.
No, I don't think it has either, actually. I was quite surprised. If you remember back to the Oprah 2021 interview, it was mainly, I would say, America very much on Harry and Meghan's side. This time, it seems to be very much the dominant theme is the Netflix documentary wasn't exactly in favour of Harry and Meghan, let's put it that way. I don't think perhaps the American media went as far as every front page I can see in front of us, Patrick.
Yes, we do have rather a lot, actually. Yeah, carry on. I mean, we'll bring some of them in. Let's bring some of them in.
Telegraph.
So hurtful, this is the Express. So hurtful, royals deeply upset by Harry's slurs. Palace anger.
Stop this royal circus. And the royal circus one's interesting, actually, because there was a bit of he said, she said yesterday in terms of were the royal family asked to comment on this Netflix documentary or weren't they?
Yeah.
Buckingham Palace and Kensington Palace, from my understanding, said they were never contacted by Netflix for a right of reply. Netflix denies that and said they were. So who are we meant to believe? And that's the problem, Patrick, with everything that's said in this documentary. There's 2 sides to every story.
Yeah, well, there are 2 sides to every story, absolutely. And whilst I will defend to the death their right to say it, and I think I would have been a massive hypocrite if I'd have sat here and, you know, knowing that I was probably going to hate it anyway or get very angry about it, deliberately taking time out of my day to watch it, knowing that I would be annoyed, I suppose. I mean, my take on it was, well, look, I'm not going to watch it in the same way I wouldn't watch a film I knew I wasn't going to like. There's rather enough commentary going on. It's on the front of every single paper. Yesterday, we had a whole host of royal experts, yourself included as well, royal reporter there, you know, analysing it. I didn't feel as though I necessarily needed to get involved with their viewing figures as such. But a lot of people are saying that it's quite offensive potentially to the Queen's legacy. Bearing in mind, as I understand it, this was recorded while the Queen was still alive.
Yeah, so the final interview was conducted in August 2022, so literally just weeks before the late Queen passed away. And I think one line which Meghan said, which is not sitting comfortably with people, is that she alluded to the fact that the Commonwealth is essentially a bit kind of well, actually, it wasn't Meghan, actually, I apologise. It was one of the historians quoted in this Netflix documentary described the Commonwealth as the colonialism 2.0 or Empire 2.0 is what it was called.
Which, of course, it is.
Back to colonial days, which is such an insult, I think many would argue, to Her Majesty the Queen, who loves the Commonwealth, this family of nations which she built up over her reign.
And that, thank you very much, Cameron. Cameron Walker there, our royal reporter. And that, I think, in a nutshell, is one of the main reasons why I didn't want to watch it, because, let's be honest, if they were going to stack it all from their own side anyway, I was going to get very irate, and I do not need to listen to a lot of kind of pound shop, faux academic, lefty race baiters to want to comment on it. I don't need that in my life. Anyway, you are with me, Patrick Christys, on GB News. Coming up, the Chancellor has announced a package of reforms to cut red tape, to turbocharge growth in the economy. So what does this shake-up actually mean for the country? Our economics editor will be here to demystify it all for us. But before that, we're going to have a very, very quick break.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prisons? I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here. You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
OK, people, yesterday we had Labour's offering, and today we've got Jeremy Hunt. He's announced the Edinburgh reforms, a package of more than 30 reforms that will cut red tape and deregulate rules in the city in a bid to turbocharge growth in the economy. Now, these reforms have been described as the biggest shake-up since the wave of deregulation under Margaret Thatcher in the 1980s. So what does this really mean for the country economically. Well, who else, people? Who else to go to? With me now is GB News' economics and business editor Liam Halligan with On the Money. Liam, what does any of this really mean?
Well, many moons ago, Patrick, back in 1986, before you were born, there was something called the Big Bang under Chancellor Nigel Lawson in Margaret Thatcher's cabinet. And what he did is he deregulated the City of London, made it more like Wall Street, more like America, really sparking lots and lots of growth. A lot of people around the country will think the City of London doesn't do anything useful, but it does do some things that are quite useful, and it does generate lots of tax revenue, and it is probably the world's leading financial capital despite Brexit. It still is a massive centre of financial and insurance expertise. And what Jeremy Hunt wants to do is he wants to bolster that position. The city has lost a little bit of ground in recent years. So after the 2008 financial crisis, there were controls and clampdowns put on banks after stocks and shares and bonds collapsed around the world, causing a massive worldwide recession. And lots of donors will like this, lots of city financiers will like this. You mentioned it yesterday. Labour had their Schmooze Fest in Canary Wharf, which, of course, is like the East London's part of the City of London. Lots of banks and so on there. And so the Tories are really now saying to the big high rollers, the financiers, actually, we are the party that you want to be back. Give us your campaign donations. And there's a serious point here. Jeremy Hunt genuinely believes that freeing up banks, allowing them to invest with a little bit less regulation will, hopefully, in his view, spark growth, make a bigger economy, more tax, more money for public services.
Yeah, without wanting to sound like a well-known radio presenter who famously said he couldn't grow concrete, is he trying to grow the pie?
He is trying to grow the pie, and there's method in his... there's method in what he's doing. I would issue a note of caution, though. After the 2008 financial crisis, I thought the regulations that came in weren't nearly strong enough. Patrick, financial crises often happen because you have big investment banks that have control over, your money, companies' monies, regular deposits. Those regular deposits are backed by taxpayers if something goes wrong. But then the other deposits that the big investment banks have, money to invest, capital from highly sophisticated investors, that is not backed by taxpayers. The problems emerge, in my view, when those two pools of capital are mingled and mixed up. That's when banks become too big to fail, because it's ordinary people's bank balances that are in danger when there's a crash. My concern is that these reforms today, ending the cap on bankers' bonuses, allowing some remingling of those ordinary deposits and investment banking deposits could lead to the same dangers that led ultimately to the 2008 financial crisis. Lots of people in politics and in finance will disagree with me, but I just want to put that out there.
No, absolutely. Now, part of me, I latched on something you said there, which is about having control of people's money. Part of me really wants someone to come and take control of what little money I have, because otherwise I just set fire to it in a metaphorical field. To be quite
available.
Yeah, all right. It's all right. You'd have to find it first. But just quickly, Liam, who do you think the banks would trust more? Because Rachel Reeves has actually got some clout when it comes to the city, hasn't she? And Jeremy Hunt, with the best will in the world, has not necessarily had a track record with the city in that sector.
But Jeremy Hunt is a very successful businessman in his own right. He is a very sort of financially literate person and known in boardrooms across Britain. Rachel Reeves, too, is no slouch in that regard. She was an economist at the Bank of England. She doesn't have so much hands-on business experience. But just going back to when I was at Canary Wharf yesterday, I did talk to lots of delegates. The main thing about Rachel Reeves is she's not John McDonnell, who was Jeremy Corbyn's sort of modern-day Marxist shadow chancellor. She does, as they say, it's not a nice term, but she does pass the boardroom sniff test. She looks like a chancellor in waiting, and she clearly is financially a sophisticated and literate person. What she has to do now is stay on message and not come up with any unfunded promises in terms of tax or spending. And she can say that's what happened when Liz Truss was in office and look what happened to the financial markets.
Exactly. Yes, Liam, thank you very much. As ever, Liam Halligan there, our economics and business editor. I'm struggling to get the image of Rachel Reeves being sniffed by a load of people in a boardroom out of my head, but thank you very much nonetheless. Patrick Christys here on GB News. Still to come, thousands of striking workers have gathered for a rally in Parliament Square today. We'll bring you the latest from all of that. I do also want to hear from you, gbviews at gbnews.uk, a theme we're going to be returning to throughout the show about whether or not you think it's ungodly to deport people. That's after a discussion in the House of Lords earlier. The Archbishop piped up again, didn't he? And as well, the Harry and Meghan fallout. Did you watch it? I didn't bother. Latest headlines coming your way right now.
It's 3:32. I'm Rhiannon Jones in the GB newsroom. The Chancellor's announced plans to overhaul the British financial sector by pledging to review and replace hundreds of pages of EU regulations. Dubbed the Edinburgh Reforms, Jeremy Hunt says Brexit has provided a golden opportunity to reshape the rules. More than 80 regulatory changes have been unveiled, including reversing some measures introduced following the 2008 financial crash. The Chancellor says the reforms are some of the biggest seen in years.
Banks have become much healthier financially since 2008. We put in place a process so that financial issues can be resolved, which we didn't have before. But on that basis, we also want to make sure they can compete with other financial centres, whether it's the United States or Asia. And Scotland is in a fantastic place to do that, and that's why these reforms will make a big difference.
Rishi Sunak was at RAF Coningsby in Lincolnshire today for the launch of a new generation fighter jet. Britain will work with Italy and Japan to develop Tempest. It's designed to replace the Typhoon jet and is expected to take to the skies by 2035. The Prime Minister says the joint venture aims to create thousands of UK jobs and strengthen security ties. More than 115,000 Royal Mail staff have walked out today in a new wave of strikes in the run-up to Christmas in an ongoing row over pay and conditions. Thousands gathered at a rally outside Parliament in central London this afternoon. Members of the Communication Workers Union will strike again on Sunday, with further action planned throughout the month, including on Christmas Eve. And King Charles and the Queen Consort have visited Wrexham AFC today alongside Hollywood co-owners Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney. The Welsh football club, which was bought by the actors last year, is one of 8 locations across the country to gain city status this summer. The Royals met players and other members of staff during a tour of the stadium. TV online and DAB+ radio, this is GB News. And here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.2258 and 1.1641 euros. The price of gold is £1,463.34 per ounce, and the FTSE 100's at 7,476 points.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club. Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512,
Virgin Media Channel 604,
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Well, one of the things I love most about doing these shows is the interaction that I get to have with you wonderful people. gbviews@gbnews.uk is that email address, and lots of you have been getting in touch. Today is no exception. And it's on your thoughts about the Archbishop of Canterbury's comments about migrants and specifically deporting them. So, Amanda says, the man is an embarrassment. How he ever got the job of representing the Church of England, I don't know. He's always sticking his political beak in where it's not wanted and leaving his flock neglected. What his flock needs is real leadership in the Christian faith, not woolly politics. He needs to understand what his job really is. Now, that's interesting, Amanda. And actually, on this note, I am quite keen to hear from you if you are a member of the Church of England, or I suppose let's branch it out, really, want to narrow it down to that, I suppose. If you are religious at all, do you think it goes against your religious values to have people being processed in Rwanda, having flights taking off there, to be taking time to process them here? I read with some interest, and indeed do read with some interest right now, about the Church of England coming under heavy criticism for a naive approach to the conversion of asylum seekers after one supposed convert, and I'm keen to stress this was one individual, so, you know, you don't want to say it's about everybody. This is the Liverpool bomber. He was apparently converted to Christianity. It's a way of meaning that, essentially, if they come from a country where they would be discriminated against if they went back, if they were Christian, then I suppose it helps ease their asylum into the UK, doesn't it? I suppose there are some moral ethics with that one. But Mark says, I'm not sure wishy-washy well-be. That might catch on, actually, Mark. Should be criticising our government's failings, given the mismanagement of his own duty in charge of the church. The usual left-wing hypocrites criticising others in pursuit of sounding nice, whilst not providing any sensible solutions. And Mark, just to zone in there with a laser-like focus on something that you said there, right, not providing any solutions, I couldn't help but notice that as well. It's all very well and good saying, well, I don't think we should be outsourcing our responsibility to Rwanda. OK. All very well and good saying that we should be doing more to look after people when they come here, or we should be speeding up the processing centre, or we should be acting in a more humane sense. Fine, but what is the answer then? Because hotels are filling up left, right and centre. I don't imagine the appetite amongst the vast majority of the British public is to spend more than the £7 million a day we are spending already just on accommodation. You lump food and everything else involved with that as well, and you're probably much closer to £10 million a day and the rest, I would imagine. And I'm keen to hear from people who are actually members of the Church of England and whether or not you feel as though the Archbishop is representing you. Shane says, Jesus teaches to fish. He does not teach just to hand out fish. Interesting. These people need to build up their own nations themselves so their nations can fish. Christianity is not about charity, but resilience. Yes, Christians help in the short term, but the solution must come from within. And there is a big argument there. I'm going to leave the emails there for a bit and move on. But just on that last one, I think it was Derek, was it? I think there's a fantastic point in there somewhere. We do have a habit in this country of trying to throw our arms around everyone. From the legal migration sense, it can lead to a brain drain from other nations. And you see a lot of African nations, for example, now, especially Middle Eastern nations with the conflict that's going on over there. If we are attracting the brightest and best, that's a great thing, don't get me wrong, but what does it mean to some of the people that are over there? If we've got, let's say, all of the best doctors or all of the best lawyers or whatever, or all of the best in any particular field, then it does kind of leave a vacuum over there. Is that the right thing to do? Is it not the fair thing maybe to essentially maybe have a tougher net migration policy? And certainly when it comes to the asylum thing as well, how are people going to rebuild a country if we just keep welcoming them all over here? I don't know. Your views, a range of views, no doubt. GBviews at gbnews.uk. Get them coming in. Come on. Anyway, thousands of striking postal workers have gathered for a rally in London today after walking out in the first of a series of strikes in the run-up to Christmas. GB News' national reporter, Theo Gikomba, is amongst the action today. Yes, good stuff, Theo. Good to see you there. And he joins us live from Parliament Square. Theo, what are workers gathering there for today? Just fill us in a bit, please.
Yes, well, good afternoon, and many of them who were here this afternoon have gone now. There were around 15,000 people here, postal workers from all corners of the country. We spoke to some people who came from Yorkshire, from Portsmouth, and they travelled here to be alongside their colleagues, and what they're saying, they want better pay and conditions. Now, in terms of Royal Mail themselves, this is what they had to say in an open letter which came out yesterday. They said 8 months of talks with the union, a pay offer of up to 9% over 18 months, but before the strikes even happened, we were losing £1 million a day. Now, of course, we are living in a cost of crisis situation at the moment. We heard earlier this morning from Labour's Shadow Home Secretary Yvette Cooper saying nobody wants to see disruptive strikes, and we're calling on ministers to engage with further talk to resolve these disputes. And this week we did hear from the Prime Minister. He was saying, but if the union leaders continue to be unreasonable, then it's my duty to take action to protect the lives and livelihoods of the British public. Now, these disruptions will mean people who are expecting gifts, presents and letters in the next few weeks are going to have to face a bit of a delay. This is just one strike amongst others we're seeing in other industries across the country at the moment.
Yes, indeed, Theo. Look, thank you very, very much. Theo Gikomba there, who's joining us from Parliament Square, just reacting really to what's been going on with the latest round of protests, I suppose, and the latest round of strikes, and no doubt will be crippling us over the Christmas period. It does seem like every single day when I come on, there's some more protests. I can't help but feel as though they've all gained traction, haven't they? We know they've all gained traction, perhaps emboldened by the fact that the RMT were piping up initially. But one thing I will say to this, and I'm becoming increasingly of this view, which is that whilst I certainly don't support all of the strikes that are taking place, and I do think, though, that there is a justification for some form of pay grade. Should there be a sliding scale in terms of the pay rises? It would be interesting, would it not, to see whether or not rail workers would be willing to forego some of their own pay in order to allow nurses to receive more pay. And the other thing I will say on this is that it is the duty of any government from any particular party to try to make sure that a situation like the one we're in now doesn't happen. And in the government itself, just because the unions are becoming increasingly militant, just because they're becoming increasingly emboldened, the government cannot be absolved of all of the blame for this. This is a crisis over Christmas and lots of people's lives in a variety of different ways, whether or not it's people having a heart attack in their own homes and there's no ambulance, whether or not it's someone wanting to deliver a package, whether or not it's someone who can't get on a train and go and see loved ones this Christmas. Whatever it is, people trying to fly home for Christmas. I mean, take your pick, frankly. They really should be having a little look at the government as well, more than a little look, and saying, well, how did you let it get to this? There you go. Anyway, two sides to it. GBviews at gbnews.uk. Right, it's World Cup quarter-finals day today as Croatia prepared to take on Brazil this afternoon. The Netherlands are competing against Argentina tonight as well. What a game that is, by the way. What a game. Anyway, meanwhile, England continue their preparations for tomorrow's clash with France. Le clash, le crunch. The good news is that Raheem Sterling has made his return to Qatar after flying home following a break-in at his home. That actually has proved rather controversial, but anyway. Let's cross over now to Doha, where our reporter Paul Hawkins is waiting for us. Paul, tell us a little bit more about today's games, first and foremost. I mean, the big one, to be honest with you, I don't massively care too much about Brazil unless you've got a load of red-hot stats about that. The big one for me is more about the Netherlands and Argentina.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that, Patrick. I mean, for me, I know the Netherlands and Argentina have a long history in competitive football, and obviously they met in the 1978 World Cup final. But for me, of an age, it was that Dennis Bergkamp goal in France '98, the one where he brought it down from a 40-yard pass, 3 touches inside, and then banged it past the Argentinians, and the Dutch went on to win. And so there's a great history between those two sides. Argentina, one of the favourites to win this, just behind Brazil, you would say. But the Netherlands do have enough to cause them problems. And Argentina, of course, they were beaten by Saudi Arabia early on, but they haven't faced a side of the Netherlands' calibre. So, yes, 2 big football heavyweights coming up at 7 o'clock your time, and that should be fascinating to watch. Right now, Brazil taking on Croatia. It is just coming up to half-time, and it's currently goalless, but Brazil being matched by Croatia all the way in that one. And, of course, Croatia do have it in their armoury to overturn Brazil as well, although you'd make Brazil big favourites in that one. Croatia, of course, reached the final of the last World Cup. Very experienced players like Luka Modric, who's 37 years young, Perisic, who plays for Spurs. Very good players, very technical, resilient. Don't write them off at all. But we're looking forward to Le Crunch tomorrow night. We know Raheem Sterling trained today. He's returned to the England setup. We know Declan Rice is also fit now. He did miss a training session earlier in the week because of illness, but he's now back. So they're all raring to go. And we even heard from earlier today, the French held a press conference. The France manager Didier Deschamps was there, their goalkeeper Hugo Lloris, who also plays for Spurs. So he was asked about Harry Kane and about playing against him, all very complimentary and fascinating. Most fascinating of all, Didier Deschamps said the English have no weaknesses, no weaknesses. Yeah. So France know they're going to be in for a game tomorrow night. They're not taking it lightly. And England know they're going to have to go up 2 or 3 gears to take on the world champions. And it's not just about Kylian Mbappe. They've got great players as well, Olivier Giroud, Antoine Griezmann as well. So if they focus on one player, they run the risk of neglecting, the other 5 or 6 key players that the French have.
Oh, absolutely. Well, it's a game that could be the final, really. Actually, pretty much like any one of the ones that are taking place today, especially that Netherlands-Argentina one, but definitely France against England. Now, Raheem Sterling is back. There was a little bit of controversy and question marks over exactly why he went home. Ben White is another one. Paul, I can't help but read things in the press today. Apparently, he had some kind of falling out with Steve Holland. I don't know. Do you know anything about this at all?
Only the reports that everyone else is reading. It was reported by the Mail, so it must be true. No, but really, they were saying that he had a falling out with Steve Holland, the assistant coach. There were also, in the same report, it suggested that Ben White hadn't gelled with the other players, which is quite an accusation to make, given that the togetherness of the England squad is something that Gareth Southgate has been lauded for. England squads in the past, very split along club lines, didn't really get along with each other. There were factions. Gareth Southgate's biggest strength has been bringing the England team together. So when you say that one player hasn't really gelled with the other players, that's quite a big accusation to make, especially given it's not just because he plays for Arsenal. Bukayo Saka's there. He's fitted into the England fold. He's an Arsenal player. So big accusations to make. They are just reports that we don't know if there are any substance to them. The England team are keeping quite tight-lipped about it. We do know that in round about in about 40 minutes' time, there'll be an England press conference with Gareth Southgate and Harry Kane, and no doubt some of the journalists will be wanting to ask him some questions about that, as well as Le Crunch tomorrow soir.
Yes, yes, indeed. And as we look ahead to Le Crunch, Paul, I've got to ask you, what do you think the result is going to be?
Oh, God. Do I go with my head or do I go with my heart? Because my head says the French are going to win. My heart says England to win, maybe 3-1, 3-2, something like that. Neither side's defence is completely robust, so I think there'll be a lot of goals in it. And did you just say 8-0, by the way?
No, not at all. Not me. I've just put a bet on. No, not at all. That's what. Yeah. Right, the issue that I have, Paul, is that my head and heart are both a bit mental. So there's no right one for me to go with there. But yes, I'm sure we are both deep down, of course, hoping that England manage to beat the French. But thank you very much, Paul. As ever, I'll be speaking to you very shortly, I would imagine. Paul Hawkins, there, our man, somewhere near a souk this time in Qatar. What do you reckon, ladies and gents? How will you be watching it as well? I'm keen to know how you're going to be watching this. I'm going to be up in Scotland, which I think we can all agree is Going to be an interesting venue to watch an England versus France game, but there we go. With the UK's Health Secretary, we're moving on now, UK's Health Security Agency issuing a level 3 cold weather alert in England, and the Met Office warning of snow and ice across the UK this week. Is this the bit in the show where I say it's December? This happens. Anyway, many people on the lowest incomes may struggle to afford the cost of heating their homes. With nowhere else to turn, warm banks could be their only option. Our North West of England reporter, Sophie Reaper, has more on warm banks.
As the frost creeps in and temperatures begin to plummet, the choice between heating and eating has never been more perilous.
It is hard deciding, do I turn my heating on or do I buy food? You know, and obviously I've got a child at home. I mean, he's 20 now, but he still needs feeding. And it's that decision everybody's got. It's hard.
As the energy crisis continues, many people would simply be forced to face the freezing temperatures this Christmas. That is, if it weren't for warm banks like the one Gillian volunteers at.
I come here because, obviously, with the cost of living and everything else, everybody's struggling, myself included. So I come here, it's a warm hub, I can get warm. Get your coat on, get your hat on and head for a warm bank because it's well worth it.
According to the Met Office, temperatures dipping well below freezing will continue until at least next week. If that is indeed the case, then warm banks like this one in Bolton are going to be absolutely vital for so many people.
Could I have a brew, please?
Yeah, what are you having?
We recognise a lot of families are struggling with the cost of living crisis. They're struggling to feed their families, to heat their homes, and we're really passionate about creating warm, safe spaces. And it's just really opening our doors and saying, without judgment, come and get warm. There's a safe space for you to come and meet other people, read a book, have a game of pool, get something to eat, and hopefully reduce the pressure on putting the heating on it at your house.
There are now over 2,500 warm banks up and down the UK, and their doors are always open to everyone.
There is no judgment. Everybody is struggling with the cost of living at the moment. And if you are struggling, go and seek help. Go somewhere. You will be welcomed wherever you go, I'm sure of it.
With this cold snap set to continue, warm banks can act as a place of refuge for anyone who may be struggling. In these difficult times, they offer people hope, a light in the darkness. Sophie Reaper, GB News.
Well, there we go. Right, OK, so coming up with me, Patrick Christys, here on GB News, we will discuss what I regard as probably the main topic of the day, the Archbishop of Canterbury's most recent condemnation of the Rwanda policy. I want to know, is Justin Welby right? And is it his place to speak out on these issues? Essentially, in a roundabout way, he's saying it's inhumane and ungodly to process asylum seekers offshore. But what's his solution? Do you think his views represent what you think? Frankly, I'm not sure they do. But before that, we're going to take a very, very short break.
Hello again, it's Aidan McGivern here from the Met Office. Crisp winter sunshine for many of us today, but it is feeling cold out there and showers are continuing to feed into some locations. Circulating around an area of low pressure in the North Sea, those showers will provide some additional snowfall to northern Scotland and a sleety mixture elsewhere into western parts of the UK. So as we end the day on Friday, further showers building up the snow for northern Scotland, Northern Ireland, southwest Scotland, northwest Wales, as well as northwest England. And increasingly the southwest will see those showers, rain and sleet at lower levels and around the coast, and some snow inland and over the hills. A widespread freezing night, however. Temperatures in towns and cities, -3 to -5 Celsius. In some shelter spots, even lower than that. And we've got those icy patches first thing because of the cold conditions and the showery nature of the weather in the west and the north. Freezing fog patches in addition to all of that across some central and southern areas. They'll persist into the afternoon in 1 or 2 spots. It will stay cold where that happens, but otherwise 2-3 Celsius typically, and over any upland areas, temperatures staying below freezing. Saturday night, then, we'll see a widespread frost return and fog patches, which will be dense, leading to poor visibilities in places. There'll also be further showers into the north of Scotland and western parts, but also increasingly southeast Scotland could see some snow coming inland. Edinburgh could see a covering by dawn on Sunday, likewise for Dundee and for Perth. But the more significant snow happening over the hills of Scotland and some hillier parts of Wales. So, for example, Snowdonia. Around coast and at lower levels, it's ice, which will be the main hazard on Sunday morning, and some of those freezing fog patches. There's the threat of some more significant snow into the southeast on Sunday and into Monday, but it stays cold everywhere.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Dubes & Co. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Dubes & Co.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Welcome back, everybody. Patrick Christys here on GB News. And coming up over the next 2 hours, the Archbishop of Canterbury, he's waded in again. He's condemned the government's migration policies. What do you make of all of this? Justin Welby used a speech in the House of Lords today to argue the Rwanda plan amounted to cruelty. So, do you think the Archbishop is right? Should he butt out of migration issues? Do you think he actually represents his flock by saying this stuff? The fallout continues from the Duke and Duchess of Sussex's Netflix documentary, which made a host of incendiary claims, including about racism in the royal family and country more broadly, which is a little bit rum, if you ask me. We'll be diving into those this hour. As always, make sure you get in touch. Those two top topics for us today that we're asking you about, whether or not you think it is indeed cruel or ungodly to deport people who are waiting for asylum, or specifically as well, who failed their asylum claim. And also, what do you make of this Harry and Meghan documentary? I haven't watched it. I know I keep banging on about that, but I want to make it clear I haven't seen a single second of it. I don't intend to, apart from the clips I get shown over here. But from what I have gathered, a lot of people thought it was relatively boring. Good. Hopefully it all goes away soon. GB Views at gbnews.uk. Get us on social media as well, at GB News. I will be sharing your thoughts throughout the show. Please don't hold back. Now, though, it's time for your latest headlines.
Good afternoon. It's 1 minute past 4. I'm Tatiana Sanchez in the GB newsroom. The Chancellor has announced plans to overhaul the British financial sector by pledging to review and replace hundreds of pages of EU regulations. Dubbed the Edinburgh Reforms, Jeremy Hunt says Brexit has provided a golden opportunity to reshape the rules. More than 30 regulatory changes have been unveiled, including reversing some measures introduced following the 2008 financial crash. The Chancellor says the reforms are some of the biggest seen in a number of years.
Banks have become much healthier financially since 2008. We put in place a process so that financial issues can be resolved, which we didn't have before. But on that basis, we also want to make sure they can compete with other financial centres, whether it's the United States or Asia. And Scotland is in a fantastic place to do that, and that's why these reforms will make a big difference.
The Prime Minister has been at the launch of a new generation fighter jet in Lincolnshire. Britain will work with Italy and Japan to develop Tempest, designed to replace the Typhoon and expected to take to the skies by 2035. Rishi Sunak says the joint venture aims to create thousands of UK jobs and strengthen security ties. Thousands of Royal Mail staff have walked off the job in a new wave of strikes. More than 115,000 workers rallied outside Parliament in central London this afternoon, demanding better pay and conditions. Members of the Communication Workers Union will strike again on Sunday, with further action planned throughout the month, including Christmas Eve. Royal Mail warns the action will affect deliveries right across the UK, and customers are being advised to post Christmas mail earlier than usual this year.
We do our bit and we like that. That's what we do. We are Royal Mail, so we're here to protect our jobs. If we don't stand today and fight that destruction of Royal Mail, not only will we not have a job, but the public won't have a service.
It's a question of whose side are you on? Are you on the union side or are you on the disgusting Tory side? There's no middle way today, and this crowd is telling us that.
Meanwhile, thousands of soldiers are preparing to cover for other workers striking this Christmas. Troops are already in training at some British ports and airports. Border Force staff at Gatwick, Heathrow and Manchester airports, among others, will strike for 8 days from December the 23rd through to New Year's Eve. Travellers hoping to head abroad over the Christmas period have been told to think carefully about their plans. 5 men have been jailed for smuggling Kurdish migrants into the UK, hidden in the back of lorries. They've been sentenced to a total of almost 24 years between them for running a large-scale people smuggling ring. The National Crime Agency says the gang leader Tariq Namik was in charge of transporting migrants from Iraq and Iran and has connections with other people smugglers outside of the UK. A fuel poverty charity is warning the rising cost of living and cold weather will leave millions struggling this winter. National Energy Action says people are facing a choice of either living in unheated homes or racking up debt. It comes as the UK Health Security Agency has issued a cold weather alert for England, with temperatures predicted to drop to as low as -10. The Met Office is warning up to 4 inches of snow could fall in London and the South East this weekend. A serving Met police officer has been charged with 2 counts of rape. PC Rupert Edwards is alleged to have carried out the offences in Lambeth and Surrey earlier this year whilst off duty. He was first arrested in September and suspended. And the King and Queen consort have met Hollywood stars Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney today on a visit to a Welsh football club. Wrexham AFC, which was brought by the actors last year, is one of 8 locations across the UK to gain city status this summer. The Royals met and talked with players and other members of staff during a tour of the stadium. This is GB News. We'll bring you more news as it happens. Now it's back to Patrick.
Welcome back, everybody. Patrick Christys here. It is 6 minutes past 4. Now, the ongoing immigration crisis escalated yet again today after the Archbishop of Canterbury described the government's asylum policy as cruelty. Speaking in the House of Lords, Archbishop Justin Welby piped up against the harmful rhetoric on migrants. Here's some of what he had to say.
A compassionate asylum system is one that sees the faces of those in need and listens to their voices. A compassionate system does not mean open borders, but a disposition of generosity and a readiness to welcome those whose need is genuine and where we are able to meet that need. When we fail to challenge the harmful rhetoric that refugees are the cause of this country's ills, then they should be treated as problems, not people, invaders to be tackled and deterred, we deny the essential value and dignity of fellow human beings.
Well, there we go. I can imagine now there's lots of you shouting at your TV or radio with a variety of different views on that. The debate comes as the crisis shows absolutely no chance of abating and, interestingly, no solutions there from Welby himself. Labour have even come to the table with a policy proposal to deal with the backlog of asylum claims. Shadow Home Secretary Yvette Cooper said she would prioritise asylum applications from safe countries such as Albania in order to reduce the backlog. Really interesting, that comment, actually, because what she's meaning there is if they're safe countries, then they shouldn't be here. So realistically, that could be read as prioritising deportations. But, of course, you wouldn't ever say that because that wouldn't appeal to their base. Also, as well, Keir Starmer didn't come out against, in fact, came out positively when it came to the idea of putting electronic tags on people who were failed asylum seekers. That is something that received a lot of criticism on Twitter, mainly until you told people that the Labour leader said he supports it, and then all of a sudden they loved the idea. Joining me now is Belinda DeLucy, former Brexit Party MEP, and Peter Tatchell, human rights campaigner and activist. Both of you, thank you very much. Great to have you both on the show. Belinda, I will start with you. Some people would criticise Justin Welby's views there, not least because of the scandal that the church found itself in for being arguably too kind to rejected asylum seekers in the past. Some conversion courses apparently being offered, one of which was used by the bloke who blew himself up outside a maternity hospital in Liverpool.
Yes, look, the UK is an incredibly compassionate and generous and charitable country already. And I think the vast majority of Brits are very happy to offer sanctuary to those most in need. But what Justin was implying today is that we need to assume every single person who steps foot on our shore is worthy of compassion. And I see absolutely nothing Christian about offering our taxpayers' money to economic migrants chancing the system, as opposed to focusing it on the genuine refugees who can't escape camps, who don't have the money to travel and the mobile phones. I see nothing Christian about overwhelming poor communities with huge numbers of young men with no jobs, and I see nothing Christian about eroding national democracy and eroding sovereignty and eroding trust in an asylum process. We have to focus the money we have on genuine asylum seekers, not on everyone who claims they're asylum seekers, because a lot of people who come here have bad intentions.
Yeah, OK, fair enough. Peter, I'll throw it over to you. Does Justin Welby pick and choose his morals? He was pretty quiet over several sexual abuse scandals and also thought that maybe we should forgive Prince Andrew.
Well, first, let me start by saying that over the last 40 years, I've helped nearly 1,000 people get asylum in this country. Every single one of them was genuine. Every single one of them has made a contribution to our society and economy. doctors, nurses, plumbers, teachers, care workers. This guy from Uganda not long ago, he fled attempts to kill him in Uganda because he was gay. He came here, he got asylum, he now works in the care system.
But that's just to say, Peter, sorry, just to say, yeah, Peter, one sec, just on that, absolutely not to diminish the fabulous work that you've done there, but I can't help but wonder whether or not you're proving some people's point, because those people who need asylum, and we are clearly willing to give them asylum, but a lot of people coming over the channel now who want to work in the underground Albanian drugs trade, do we really have to be offering them asylum? Is it against Christian morality to process them in Rwanda, Peter? Because that's really who most people are thinking of.
Well, of course it's right that we should not give asylum to bogus people. But I'm just telling you that out of all the people that I've helped over the years, every single one, perhaps bar one person, has been genuine and has made a contribution to this economy. What I think is madness about the asylum system is we don't let refugees work while their asylum case is being processed. So for maybe 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, they depend on state benefits. When those people actually want to work, they could contribute to the economy, they'd be paying tax, they'd be paying national insurance. The ban on asylum seekers working is economic madness. It's damaging our economy. These are people we need. You know, we have a shortage of thousands and thousands of doctors and nurses, farm workers.
Well, I get what you mean, but I get what you mean, and there is absolutely a case for the sake that what's the point of having some of these people hanging around a hotel somewhere in a field in Cumbria when we have got various different jobs that need doing in this country? I take that point on the chin, but Belinda, I'll throw it back to you, really. He is the Archbishop of the Church of England, and, yeah, OK, all right, maybe I am being a bit too black and white about this, but there are a lot of English people, maybe even some of his flock, who are homeless at the moment. How do you think they might feel to hear him, it would appear, maybe prioritising people who are coming from other countries and of different faiths, possibly?
Yeah, unfortunately, I think this is quite a common thread with sort of left-leaning liberals, is that they prioritise the global citizen above the national citizen. And can I just take Peter's point? You know, he was talking about doctors and nurses coming over here. Has he ever thought about the poorer countries being stripped of their medical staff? Places like Romania, who lost a third of its hospital staff between 2011 and 2013, whose two hospitals had to close. It seems like the sort of left-wing middle class here don't care that they're stripping poor countries of their medical staff and their medical researchers as long as they get their feet washed in their hospitals. I think with poor, you are not going to uplift the global poor by allowing them all into this country. Imagine if Spain suddenly had 44,000 Brits turn up at its shores with no documents, demanding housing, demanding free food at the expense of the Spanish taxpayer. It would be absolutely atrocious and it would never be allowed. So I don't know why England is always having to submit to this. We need to take care of our own first and focus on genuine asylum seekers, so we give them the money.
All right. Peter, are you, I don't know, maybe you're not, I'm not sure, but are you a little bit squiffy about the head of the Church of England going into bat for this? Because my interpretation of it is that it would be trying to paint the current asylum policy, immigration policy, whatever, as ungodly and unholy. I understand that the Church of England now has different rules and regs when it comes to same-sex marriage, etc. But that was quite a long battle. It remains a battle. And if you take Christianity at its most fundamental level, it wouldn't have anything really to do with the LGBTQ plus community. How do you feel about someone who is a man of the cloth going into bat for asylum seekers? Is it a mixed bag for you?
Maybe it is a mixed bag, but I think he's right on this issue. And I'm prepared to judge Justin Welby on this issue. And I think he's shown both compassion and common sense. And in response to Belinda, it is in our interest of our people that we have the workers we need to staff the NHS and to teach in our schools and to pick the crops we need for our food. And these are people, by the way, in my case, they're all people who fled persecution because of their sexuality, their political beliefs, their religion, their ethnicity. These are people who had to flee. And since they've been here, they've made a huge positive contribution to our economy. That's the way we should look at it. We should also say that if Britain did more to resolve the reasons why people flee, then we have less refugees coming here. So, for example, over Syria, I've helped many Syrian refugees who suffered incredible tortures and abuses by the Assad regime. If we had intervened earlier through the United Nations and done something.
Yeah, I get that, and I think, but again, look, I get all of that, and I can't help but feel like yet again this is another impact of Tony Blair being kind of unflushable in our society, really. Because if we hadn't have done what we've done in Iraq, I think we possibly would have gone in earlier there. But anyway, there we go. I just want to keep you both on the line because I want you both to react to this. I believe we have the Archbishop of York who has also chimed in. Can we play it?
You know, the hard truth is, our asylum system simply doesn't treat everyone the same. It doesn't give people the dignity, safety and agency that their humanity deserves. Lord Lilly, everyone is our neighbour. Of course, we can't take everybody, but we must therefore, even more so, have a fair system for everyone.
Well, Belinda, is he not right? We don't treat everyone the same. I mean, there are thousands of homeless veterans while some people are in four-star asylum seeker hotels.
That we don't treat everyone the same. We're certainly not treating our homeless people the same as we are the newcomers, or those on housing waiting lists the same as newcomers. Look, there's over 100 million displaced people in the world at the moment. Hundreds of millions of people living under the poverty line around the world at the moment. We simply cannot accept them all. Therefore, we have to prioritise. And the truth is, the most persecuted and the most at risk from death are those stuck in camps, not the Albanian men that are coming over here. We have serious issues with Albanian crime, and I'm not trying to demonise Albanians. We've got wonderful Albanians in our country with Albanian heritage, like Dua Lipa and Rita Ora. You know, both come from Albanian backgrounds, but their families came here legally. The question is, why are Albanian men throwing their documents in the sea, spending thousands to get here illegally instead of getting on a plane? It smacks of bad intentions. They should not be treated the same as genuine asylum seekers.
Peter, there are serious accusations being levelled at the church about the fact that once several people have been turned down from asylum, they would try to use the church to convert to Christianity as a way of saying that they would then be persecuted in their own country if they said if they were sent back. Also, serious allegations about people pretending to be gay, Peter, in order to do just the same thing. Again, I'll just ask you how that makes you feel, because I wonder whether or not sometimes you feel as though your good nature and some, frankly, of your lived experiences, really, are being abused by some of these people, and whether or not that makes you feel a bit squiffy.
Well, I can assure you that the asylum system is very rigorous. No one can simply turn up and say, I'm gay or I'm Christian and get asylum. They have to prove it. They have to prove a long backstory, and if they can't prove it, they get refused. And that is quite right. We do not have any obligation to give a haven to bogus refugees. And I would say that the way we need to act now is to put money in to employ more Home Office staff, to clear the backlog, to get rid of the bogus ones, but to provide a safe haven for those who are genuine, because those genuine people will contribute to our economy, they'll pay tax and national insurance, they will be an asset.
Just quickly, I'll give the final word over to you, Peter. Sorry, Belinda, but I think it's a point of interest here for a lot of people, because when it comes to the proving of one's homosexuality, for example, and trying to produce a backlog of evidence as a result of that, if you come from a country where you would be killed or executed or whatever if you were gay, presumably these people can't produce any evidence, and yet they are still allowed to stay. How does that situation work in reality, Peter? How do you prove that you're gay without just saying
even
it?
in many repressive countries, there are clandestine LGBT plus groups, which some of those people have been involved in for a long time. But in other cases, you're right, it's very difficult for them to produce such evidence. But what they can do is produce love letters, emails, WhatsApp messages between themselves and potential partners. But then, of course, when they're here, they have to prove that they're engaged and involved with the LGBT plus community. And that can't just be a one-off attendance at an event. It has to be a long history. Plus, of course, they have to get information and recommendations from Home Office recommended experts who can attest to the persecution in their home country. They have to get a lot of documentation, a lot of evidence.
OK, good stuff, both of you. Thank you very much. I enjoyed that chat rather a lot, actually. Former Brexit Party MEP Belinda de Lucy and Peter Tatchell as well, human rights campaigner and activist. Right, that is the issue that we're going to be going in with, well, kind of throughout the show, really, on and off, which is whether or not you think it is ungodly or cruel to be deporting people who are failing asylum processing or to be indeed process them offshore. But as people will be able to see on the bottom of their screens there, Meghan and Harry, yes, that's the other big topic. On the course of today's show, you are with me, Patrick Christys, on GB News, and coming up, it is that Meghan and Harry topic. They've made renewed claims about racism in their new Netflix documentary. Did anyone else clock in our bulletins earlier about the fact that apparently King Charles and Camilla went to Wrexham Football Club to meet the celebrity owners of that? I believe that Wrexham has a documentary on Netflix. I can't help but feel as though that's maybe a little bit of a side-eye there. Anyway, we'll be talking about all of this very, very shortly. Don't go anywhere.
I'm Mark Dolan. Join me at 11 on GB News for Headliners, in which I'll be joined by two of the UK's top comedians discussing tomorrow's papers. If it's an important story, we'll cover it, but we'll have some fun along the way. Headliners, the late-night paper review that won't send you to sleep like the others will. 7 nights a week at 11 p.m. on GB News.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison? I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton Tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Lawrence Fox, on GB News. Frank, fun, fearless, and sometimes serious. Much as I love a Friday night punch-up, what I really want is a battle of ideas. I want to look at things differently. I want to hear different voices and engage with your unique experiences. Every Friday at 7 p.m. on GB News.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel. Right, I have a minor correction that I'm going to make now, and it is in relation to the fact that apparently a documentary about Wrexham is not on Netflix, it's on Disney+, as one of my producers, who bizarrely is remarkably invested in it, has pointed out. You may be asking why I said this. Well, it's in relation to something that is on Netflix, and that Meghan and Harry series has now been on Netflix for more than 24 hours. There's no end of revelations, apparently, with the couple discussing Harry's childhood, their frustration with the media, and, of course, we couldn't get away with it, could we? Meghan's race.
People need to understand as far as a lot of the family were concerned, everything that she was being put through, they had been put through as well. So it was almost like a rite of passage. And some of the members of the family was like, right, but my wife had to go through that. So why should your girlfriend be treated any differently? Why should you get special treatment? Why should she be protected? And I said, the difference here is the race element.
You see, yet again, is this not a slightly confusing thing from Prince Harry, where he appears to be making one point and then manages just to confuse himself halfway through and then make a completely different point? If they all had to go through it, and then he played clips of Fergie and Diana, both quite noticeably white, and they all went through the same thing, how is it the race thing that is the problem for Meghan anyway? Joining me now to discuss these claims is Afzal Pervez, who is a Commonwealth youth leader. They had a few things to say about the Commonwealth as well, apparently, Afzal. Great to have you on the show. Do you think that Prince Harry is right to point out, along with Meghan, the fact that her race may have played a part in her treatment, her shocking, sickening, disgusting treatment by the press? Just worth noting, a little asterisk there, that previously Meghan Markle, along with many celebrities, will have, enjoyed press attention. Let's put it that way. Your views?
Patrick, you said it yourself, and I totally agree. He contradicted himself. He said that, they all went through it as a rite of passage, all the wives of the princes and the duchesses that we have. But then he says it's because of her race. And as a visibly ethnic person, I think to myself, what is the element of race here? Where are you proving this from? And I'll be honest, I have to say this, it makes me embarrassed that all the work I do about race equality in this country is just completely overshadowed by someone just making these claims that it's something to do with race.
Afzal, is there an irony here, a tragic irony, that what Harry and Meghan are doing by banging on about race so much may actually be diminishing the impacts that genuine racism has on people?
It's taking away from all the hard efforts of real race activists, race equality activists. It's taking away from their efforts. I mean, the work I do with the Commonwealth about racial equality, and then you get people like this saying all these things, you think, Patrick, I stand by the point that Britain is not an institutionally or systematic racist country, and it's not. And we need to celebrate what we have in this country, and that is racial equality, opportunities for everyone of every colour, of every ethnicity.
Can I ask, you don't have to answer, it's a personal question. Have you encountered racism in your life in this country?
I have, like I've encountered in other countries. I travel the Commonwealth, as I said previously on this programme, and I have experienced race. I get the questions, where are you from? I get those questions from bigoted people. But that's a very small minority of people who, need a bit of educating, and then we move on.
Yeah, and I can imagine how it made you feel, but how does it make you feel now, the idea that, Meghan and Harry, in a life of luxury, being paid X amount of tens of millions of dollars for this, and Prince Harry already a millionaire, Meghan Markle quite probably already a millionaire. I'm sure she was if she was in suits for that length of time. These people now making it all about them. We're in the middle of a cost of living crisis. We've got nurses going on strike. We've got strikes left, right and centre. People are struggling to heat their own homes. They might not be even being able to buy food and stuff. And you've got this lot who are saying, we all need to pity them.
It's genuinely shocking, and you're right. Look, I've been called a race traitor, right, a number of occasions. I get up and do a speech, and I get called a race traitor by, hard lefties who can't see beyond my colour and think, in fact, they're the racists because they can't see beyond my colour. And they are these millionaires living a supposedly private life in California. They left the United Kingdom to live a private life. So, in fact, whilst I am looking at the views and analysing the documentary, I'm not watching the documentary because, I'm just giving them the privacy they've always asked for.
Yeah, well, indeed, I did a similar thing, but these views are freely available, and the fact is that I cannot ignore, I'm I don't say made to watch clips on this show. Obviously it's my job and stuff like that, and it's part and parcel of it. I will not actively be sitting in and tuning in and wasting an hour of my life on Netflix. You can't move for it on Twitter as well, it must be said. It is pretty much all over the place. But you and your role as a Commonwealth youth leader, they have also teed off, not for the first time, by the way, on the Commonwealth, linking it to empire, linking it to racism, linking it to slavery. Your views on that?
Why are they gaslighting millions of people who are proud Commonwealth citizens, right? I've said this before and I'll say this again. The Commonwealth is a free union of independent countries who all come together for common values. They are voluntarily in this union. We've had a number of additions this year to the Commonwealth, and it's a constantly expanding organisation. Her Majesty the late Queen worked so hard to create this Commonwealth as a free union of countries with common value, and with them gaslighting millions and saying, oh, you're in this racist union that comes from an empirical past. We all have a past, we all have a history, we learn from it, we move on, and we better it. And what the late Queen did was appreciate the negatives of the past and turn it around into something incredibly positive. And, I simply cannot support and cannot agree with anyone who's going to, criticise the Commonwealth in such a way that does so good for this world.
It just absolutely cracks me up, the idea that you've got these two people there from a Montecito mansion and everything, just lecturing us all about life and about the struggles in life. And it is, I honestly believe it's just something that helps them both sleep at night, because you look at the amount of immense privilege that both of them will have had. Even Meghan, yes, I'm sure she worked very hard to get her first appearances and whatever, but since then, when she's on TV all the time and she's got money coming in, she does get immense privilege. And I think it's one of those things that it makes them sleep better at night by just lecturing us all about stuff, really. Anyway, Afzal, thank you very much. Afzal Pervez, who is a Commonwealth youth leader. GB Views at GBNews.uk on all of that. Two of the big ones straight off the top there, ladies and gents, that we had, didn't we? We had the initial one from Justin Welby, the Archbishop of Canterbury, who was piping up in the House of Lords earlier on, saying that actually it's cruel and, I mean, reading between the lines, evil as well to be deporting people. We also had Meghan and Harry. But yes, you are with me, Patrick Christys, on GB News. The Chancellor has announced his plan to tear up banking red tape post-Brexit. Oh, that's a relief. I can sleep now. But how will it work? And what does it all really mean? We will crunch the numbers and all of that with our very own economics editor after your headlines.
Thank you, Patrick. It's 4:32. This is the latest from the GB newsroom. The Chancellor has announced plans to overhaul the financial sector, pledging to review and replace hundreds of pages of EU regulations. Dubbed the Edinburgh Reforms, Jeremy Hunt says Brexit has provided a golden opportunity to reshape the rules. More than 30 regulatory changes have been unveiled, including reversing some measures introduced following the 2008 financial crash.
Banks have become much healthier financially since 2008. We put in place a process so that financial issues can be resolved, which we didn't have before. But on that basis, we also want to make sure they can compete with other financial centres, whether it's the United States or Asia. And Scotland is in a fantastic place to do that, and that's why these reforms will make a big difference.
The Prime Minister has been at the launch of a new generation fighter jet in Lincolnshire. Britain will work with Italy and Japan to develop Tempest, designed to replace the Typhoon and expected to take to the skies by 2035. Rishi Sunak says the joint venture aims to create thousands of UK jobs and strengthen security ties. More than 115,000 Royal Mail staff have walked off the job in a new wave of strikes. Thousands gathered at a rally outside Parliament in central London this afternoon, demanding better pay and conditions. Members of the Communication Workers Union will strike again on Sunday, with further action planned throughout the month, including on Christmas Eve. King Charles and the Queen Consort have visited Wrexham AFC, meeting the football club's Hollywood co-owners Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney. The Royals also met players and other members of staff during a tour of the stadium. TV, online and DAB+ radio. This is GB News. Stay with us. Patrick's back in a moment.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio or online, every morning it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. B, I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and tune-in apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Welcome back, everybody. Now, Chancellor Jeremy Hunt has announced the Edinburgh reforms, a package of more than 30 reforms that will cut red tape and deregulate rules in the city, and that is in a bid to turbocharge growth in the economy. These reforms have been described as the biggest shake-up since the wave of deregulation under Margaret Thatcher in the 1980s. As the reforms include relaxations on what bankers can do with their money, requiring regulators to make London more competitive on the international stage, and scrapping red tape to boost the stock market. So, what does all of this really mean to the country economically? With me now to discuss this is GB News' very own economics and business editor. It's Liam Halligan with On the Money. Picking up on where we were from the last hour.
Well, there's a sort of tit-for-tat going on between the Tories and Labour. Yesterday, Labour had their business schmooze fest at Canary Wharf, that citadel to East London-style capitalism. And now the Tories have come back with scrapping on bankers' bonuses, easing regulations around banks, trying to drum up more investment in the City of London. What's going on underneath? It's a kind of battle for campaign donations.
Right.
Because we saw in the run-up, in the 3 months up to September, for the first time since Jeremy Corbyn took over as Labour leader back in 2016, of course, now replaced by Keir Starmer, Labour are actually raising more money for their campaign coffers than the Tories. So that doesn't happen very often. And so this is partly about campaign donations, but also, I think, on the part of Jeremy Hunt, the Chancellor, it's also a genuine move on his part to try and drum up more business in the capital, in the City of London, which, of course, raises tax revenues for a lot of the rest of the country too.
Yeah, so why do you think the Labour Party is raising more money now than the Tories? Because that will be quite shocking for a lot of people to hear.
Yeah, it's raising more money because it's starting to say sort of business-friendly things. Shadow Chancellor Rachel Reeves, we've often discussed, she wants to scrap all business rates, Patrick. They're the kind of levies on the rateable values of business. You pay them if you own a big factory. You pay them if you run a kebab shop or a sort of plumber's yard, builder's merchants or something like that. They are the bane of the life, particularly of small and medium-sized enterprises, because you have to pay them whether you raise any money or not. Before you've taken a penny of revenue, you have to pay your business rates. They are always there, even if you don't make any profit. At the same time, I think the Tories are getting very tired in the eyes of lots of people. I think what could happen, though, two things I wanted to say. Firstly, this kind of easing of these regulations on the city, this is a sort of reversal of some of the regulations that were brought in the aftermath of the 2008 financial crisis, which, of course, caused carnage, a major recession across the world economy. I think when we look back, it could be seen as a mistake to ease these regulations now. I think, yet again, we've forgotten the lessons of history, the lessons of history being always that you forget the lessons of history. The other thing I wanted to say is that I do think that Keir Starmer's party is now sensing power.
Yeah.
They are 20 points ahead in the opinion polls, Patrick, consistently. And the reality is, as we saw at Canary Wharf yesterday, 350 business leaders suited and booted from the likes of HSBC, the insurance giant Aviva, Microsoft UK. When they sense there's going to be a change of government, they want to get in there, they want to start donating, they want to start influencing the people that they think will soon be in power.
But I just can't help but wonder on that, actually. It's an interesting note, because is that what the Labour Party want? Because the Labour Party for ages have been saying, the Tories are in the pockets of the big bankers and everything. And the first opportunity, the Labour Party has stood there. Everyone's got a suit and boots on, sponsored by HSBC.
Patrick, you don't strike me as naive. Look, when the Tories are doing it, Labour will say it's business cronyism.
Yeah.
When Labour do it, they'll say, it's consulting with the captains of industry.
They've seen sense, yeah.
It's all about the rhetoric here, isn't it? Look, neither party, as far as we can see, the numbers I've cited there from the Electoral Commission, neither party is breaking any laws. There are actually very strict laws around campaign donations in this country. You and I can be cynical or certainly sceptical about motives here, rightly so, I think. But this isn't, like the US or somewhere where campaign donations basically determine political outcomes. At least that's how a lot of people would see it.
We are still a couple of years away from the next general election, probably, anyway. Let's see how we go.
It could be as late as 2025.
Yes, yeah, exactly. So once these big beasts have thrown their weight behind the Labour Party, whether or not they were just consulting, whether or not they've made their minds up, how easy is it to turn that back? Are these people just in it now? They have decided that they're back in Labour in the next general election, and that's that.
No, look, these guys are sophisticated. They back both sides, of course. That's what big business does. They will see it as part of their, public service. They want to help political parties develop their policies and all the rest of it. But, of course, they're getting in there and influencing and trying to sort of get close to lawmakers. At the same time, I think we're going to see a real battle now. As the polls, with Labour now well ahead in the polls, people assuming, the betting market certainly assuming at this point, still a way to go, they're going to be the next government. There is going to be a big focus on these campaign donations. And I predict throughout this Christmas of discontent, like a throwback to the 1970s with lots of industrial action, there will be a lot of pressure on the Labour Party to criticise what trade unions are doing. But, of course, it's very difficult for Labour to do that because they still get millions of pounds a year from the public sector, from the trade unions. Trade unions still make up a third of Labour's ruling national executive. They send a half of all delegates to Labour's annual party conference. Look, Labour is not the party of the unions, but Labour is heavily influenced by the unions. And a lot of Labour MPs would say, and I'm proud of that.
Yeah.
Without apology. Lots of GB News viewers and listeners will think that's exactly right, that organised Labour has organised political representation. On the other hand, I would say over the next few weeks, and it could be months of strikes, that idea that the trade unions have a right to strike, that they're always correct to face up to the bosses, to face up to the government, that could be sorely tested.
Well, it will be. It will have to be at some point if this continues, especially when you're looking at the pay demands. And it's a perfect storm as well because of the rate of inflation at the moment and those pay demands going up, etc. It kind of crystallises whether or not they should have a right and whether or not their demands are reasonable. But Liam, thank you very much. Liam Halligan there, our economics and business editor, just whizzing you through all of the latest there. Right, OK, so... on that note, actually, thousands of mail workers are to strike in a dispute over pay and conditions as the war between the Communications Workers Union and Royal Mail continues to grow. This comes as the CWU announced they were planning more strikes in December, with a large rally held today in Parliament Square to rally support behind their conditions. The General Secretary, Dave Ward, said his members would not even accept a 50% pay rise if it included the terms and conditions. Well, hang on. OK, anyway, we'll get stuck into that because I would imagine if he put that to members, he'd be wrong about that. But there we go. Showing the willingness of the postal workers to strike. A former editor of The Sun, Kelvin Mackenzie, is with me now. Kelvin, what do you see when you look at the latest round of people through Parliament Square waving their union flags?
I see a lot of dupes, to be honest. I feel sorry for them. The General Secretary is clearly an idiot, saying something about 50%. But more important than that is if you're around in 10 years' time, or more importantly, if I'm around in 10 years' time, instead of employing 115,000 employees, Royal Mail would be lucky to employ 20,000. The reality is nobody wants a letter. The only letter that has any consequence these days is those brown jobbies. And I don't know about you, I don't like receiving them. So I could see us coming to a day where letters are delivered once a week or once a month, or even we have to go down to the sorting centre and pick up our own. And by the way, the bosses see this, and actually the unions see this. But as with all unions, and I worked in the print in the 80s and 90s, it was, the 80s anyway, and the 70s. It was an absolute nightmare. They were a bunch of mafia thugs who, when they got the opportunity, especially in the print, would simply stop a paper because it was a 24-hour business. These guys haven't got the leverage. They're very nice people. My local postman, Ray, a great guy. However, their jobs are over. It's a bit like replacing plates on horses' hooves. It was great it was being done. It's not going to be done anymore. It's over. And what they should do is do what the printers accepted when they took the Rupert Murdoch check. In the end of the day, they should be negotiating huge redundancy payments, and then they can set out on equally highly paid jobs, nothing to do with the Royal Mail. The idea of being a postman, I'm afraid, or a post person, I should say, is a 20-year-old idea. I'm afraid the way that I am talking to you, the online world, is the way that all communication is being delivered. It's very sad.
Well, not just
very
that.
Decent people, the game's up.
Yeah, well, it's not just that as well. It's just other companies delivering stuff. I mean, you've got your Amazons, you've got everything. The idea of a monopoly and potentially just dining out on the fact that it's called Royal Mail and trying to insinuate therefore that it's some form of British institution. Yeah, fine, OK. But if you change the name, I think a lot of normal people might feel a bit less sympathetic towards it. The bigger picture, though, when it comes to these strikes in general, do you think they recognise a lot of the time that potentially they are being whipped up by a load of people who possibly do have links to the Communist Party, the Kremlin, if you believe the Times? Do you think that the workers are actually being used by people to push a political agenda?
No, they love those lefties in charge, right? They love them because the lefties, the communists, which the president of the RMT, which was the Times investigation, showed he's on the executive committee of the Communist Party of Great Britain. He actually wants to destroy capitalism.
Yeah.
And he's one of the three of the broad left that run the RMT.
Yeah.
All these guys know that their members want you to be as nasty as possible. Why? To put money in their pocket. With the Royal Mail, they have no leverage. I'm sorry. It's good night to the post guy.
Yeah, but the others do, and it's part of a bigger picture, which is the fact that, all right, it's not just the Royal Mail, is it? Let's be honest, it's nurses, it's ambulance workers, it's the trains, as we alluded to, teachers probably at some point. I mean, the irony, of course, is if I went on strike, no one would notice. The viewing figures would probably go up. But
no, they'd be pleased.
They'd be pleased. We'd be getting emails in. I have been getting emails in.
Well, I tell you what, your CEO will probably give you a bonus for staying off air. Increase the audience.
Probably, yeah. I get emails in every single day. When is Patrick going on strike? Just so we can make sure that we actually tune in. But
you'd be a great postman. You'd be a great postman.
Yeah, well, yeah.
As a broadcaster, you make a great postman.
All right, but together, collectively, all of these people do have leverage. And are we witnessing a bit of a sea change now, Calvin? One becoming even more emboldened by the other?
Well, there's no doubt that there is a competition between these general secretaries to see who could be the more vile. This guy saying, I wouldn't take 50%, that wins by 1,000 miles, by the way.
Yeah.
Somebody should announce to him, yes, you've won the prize. You are more stupid than any other trade union leader. Honestly, it's a tremendous fight out there, but you've done it. A ridiculous thing. And no post person would actually say that's a good idea. They'd all no, look, it's a dangerous area. But the idea the nurses are going on strike, the ambulance people, it's incredible. And not only that, even the driving lesson people are going on strike.
Well, yeah, but I think that takes the absolute biscuit, by the way. Certainly, indeed, the chap who, bless him, did my driving test and managed to wave me through with no minors when at one point I went the wrong way down a one-way street, which, I've done my best to try to improve upon.
Well, when I did mine, he banged on the thing to brake, and I braked, and my reactions were good on this occasion. I went bang like that. He shot forward and bruised his nose.
And that's the story that you told the judge. All right, Calvin, just wrestling it back onto the main topic. Would you be in favour of a sliding scale of pay rises? Because I wonder whether or not we could pitch this to a variety of different union leaders. So, would rail workers be willing to forego some of their pay rise if that went towards nurses? Are we now confronted with a situation where we have to decide, of all of these different striking groups, who we think is the most important to society, and finally rank people?
No, that's impossible. That is literally impossible, nor desirable.
But we all do it.
We already have a system where nurses were given this amount of money. By the way, average pay under this system, they will go to 41,000. So it's not fantastic, but it's not too bad. So we have a system that works like that. Life isn't fair. And the other issue that isn't fair, supposing you're a non-state worker, that is 25 million of our country do not work for the state. The 5 million that love putting the arm on us and have the most fantastic pensions. Nobody talks about that. Well, 20% of their money they can get in pensions. It's fantastic. Whereas if you're in private industry, you're lucky to get a couple of sticks of Kit Kat, frankly.
Well, one thing I think would be fascinating. It's impossible. It's impossible. What would be fascinating is if we did some form of referendum. Because whenever I go out and vox pop people, I go, "Do you want to pay more tax?" willingly, you get a lot of people who go, "Oh, absolutely, we need to fund it." And then the camera starts rolling and they go, "No way," but I'm not saying that. It's like the Refugees Welcome Brigade, right? Of course, absolutely. Well, would you let one live in your spare room? Oh, of course I'd let one live in my spare room. What's the problem? The camera stops and they're like, absolutely no way in hell am I letting a random Albanian chap move in with my nan. It's not happening. But I wondered if we actually did some form of national referendum on this and go, OK, do you want to pay this amount more tax in order to pay for all of this stuff? I don't think the result would be close.
Yeah, no. Nobody... The idea there's some grasping, rather nasty rail train driver. He says, "I'll tell you what I'll do. I'm going to give 4.3% of my money to that nurse who's done 5 or 6 years because she's earning possibly about 60% of what I make or 50%. It's out of the question. I'm afraid, as it has turned out, this is a fight to the death. It's not quite a general strike because there's 25 million of us who haven't got the leverage to destroy or kill somebody's grandmother.
Well, when it comes to the health stuff, 100%, I know we've spoken about that, and it's an issue that we both feel very, very passionately about. I think more people should feel passionately about, actually, because for me, I've copped it big time on this, online and at times in the inbox. But for me, it is as black and white as if you knowingly do choose to go into a line of work. I've got massive sympathy of the pay structure of that, if not to your liking. I've got huge sympathy for the fact that the way inflation is going and everything, you know, you might now be skint as a result of it. And it's not to discredit that. And I'm sure you probably, in some cases, do deserve more money. But if it does mean that an elderly lady dies at the foot of her stairs because you don't turn up, I'm sorry, but I'm not in favour of that. And there are more patients than there are people working in the NHS. And there's a lot of people working in the NHS. And I make no excuse for being on the side of the patients. But how does this end, Kelvin? The whole thing. You said it's a fight to the death. In the end, is the person needing these services, whether it's the trains, whether it's people passing a driving test, whether it's patients, are they not the people who really lose? Because if the unions go pop, I don't know, talk me through it. How does this end?
Well, it's not going to end anytime soon, right? So there's going to be no easy solutions. And the idea that those jerks of border force can actually ruin people's holidays who've booked it months in advance, I'd like to see them actually locked in their houses and see how they like it when you can't do what you want to do. What about the RMT? Next week, I have no idea how that's going to work. Loads of people are simply not going to go to work. Now, it's not going to have the effect it would have had 2 years ago, or 5 years ago, but it's going to damage business. It's going to put little guys out of work. They don't give a stuff about anybody. They're not fighting for anybody else. They're fighting for themselves.
Well, what about the cost of the economy as well? So, roughly speaking, 30 million quid a day for these train strikes. If you add everything up, it's impossible to quantify, but it's a number that's so big it wouldn't fit on this piece of paper. It's probably, you know, some other well-known media celebrity's monthly pay packet by the sounds of things. You know, that's an astonishing amount of money to be costing this country on a daily basis. And actually, at what point does it become a crime?
Well, I love the idea of the government getting on the front foot and actually trying to force them. Now, it's not going to be easy, this, but somebody has got to say to the nurses, I tell you what, the reason you came into this was not to kill people, it was to save people. They say this to the junior doctors. They say this to the ambulance guys. We are watching the destruction of the NHS. And funnily enough, that may be a good thing. We've had, I think, 75 years of it. I think, thank you, Aniron. It's time to go.
All right, Kelvin, thank you very much. Kelvin Mackenzie, the former editor of The Sun, with his views. Strong stuff, as always. GB Views at gbnews.uk. Moving on from that, though, a gang of armed criminals who were about to carry out a hit have been arrested. We'll bring you all the latest on that. Also, a financial shake-up at some point. I bet it was a financial shake-up to those armed gangs, wasn't it? Anyway, now, though, it's your weather. I bet it's chilly.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you know, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
There's a guy who went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club. Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512,
Virgin Media Channel 604,
Freesat Channel 216,
Freeview Channel 236,
and YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio,
with the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere. Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back, everybody. It's just gone 5 p.m. It's Patrick Christys here on GB News. Coming up over the next hour, the Chancellor has announced a package of reforms touted as the biggest financial shake-up since the Thatcher era. So, why have they done it? What's it all really about? We'll break all of that down with economist Vicky Price. And the controversy continues from the Duke and Duchess of Sussex's 6 tell-all Netflix documentary. That's quite a difficult turn of phrase to say, actually. The Sussex's 6 episodes. Anyway, some people are even calling for their royal titles to be stripped. What do you think about that? I'll bring you all the latest results of our GB News People's Poll to find out what people make of the Sussex's truth. And new shameful NHS stats are out as well. You'll never guess how many people are now on an NHS waiting list. It somehow has gone up. It'll be all of us very, very shortly, won't it? And I'll also be delving in as well to the idea, maybe, just maybe, that we are not a particularly nice and welcoming nation. That is what Archbishop of Canterbury, Justin Welby, appears to say. He really thinks that it's essentially ungodly for us to be deporting people or processing them overseas. Your views on that, GB Views at gbnews.uk. We're potentially going to go priest versus priest on that as well. You'll love to see it. That email address again, gbviews at gbnews.uk. Get us on social media at GB News. I'll give you my thoughts later on throughout the course of the show, but now it's time for your latest headlines.
Good afternoon, 1 minute past 5. I'm Tatiana Sanchez in the GB newsroom. The Chancellor has announced plans to overhaul the financial sector, pledging to review and replace hundreds of pages of EU regulations. Dubbed the Edinburgh Reforms, Jeremy Hunt says Brexit has provided a golden opportunity to reshape the rules. More than 30 regulatory changes have been unveiled, including reversing some measures introduced following the 2008 financial crash.
Banks have become much healthier financially since 2008. We put in place a process so that financial issues can be resolved, which we didn't have before. But on that basis, we also want to make sure they can compete with other financial centres, whether it's the United States or Asia. And Scotland is in a fantastic place to do that, and that's why these reforms will make a big difference.
Thousands of Royal Mail staff have walked off the job in a new wave of strikes. More than 115,000 workers rallied outside Parliament in central London, demanding better pay and conditions. Members of the Communication Workers Union will strike again on Sunday, with further action planned throughout the month, including Christmas Eve. The Prime Minister says the government is looking at tough new laws to help minimise disruption. Royal Mail workers at the rally explained why they're taking action. Meanwhile, thousands of soldiers are preparing to cover for other workers striking this Christmas. Troops are already in training at some British ports and airports. Border Force staff at Gatwick, Heathrow and Manchester airports, among others, will strike for 8 days from December the 23rd through to New Year's Eve. Travellers hoping to head abroad over the Christmas period have been told to think carefully about their plans. The Prime Minister has been at the launch of a new generation fighter jet in Lincolnshire. Britain will work with Italy and Japan to develop Tempest, designed to replace the Typhoon and expected to take to the skies by 2035. Rishi Sunak says the joint venture aims to create thousands of UK jobs and strengthen security ties. Well, a pupil at a school in Sussex who's thought to have had the invasive strep A infection has died. The UK Health Security Agency says the child had attended Hove Park School. It said it's working with Brighton and Hove City Council as well as the school to raise awareness of the signs and symptoms. It brings the total number of child deaths from the recent outbreak of strep A in the UK to 16. 5 men have been jailed for smuggling Kurdish migrants into the UK hidden in the back of lorries. They've been sentenced to a total of almost 24 years between them for running a large-scale people smuggling ring. The National Crime Agency says the gang leader Tariq Namik was in charge of transporting migrants from Iraq and Iran and has connections with other people smugglers overseas. A fuel poverty charity is warning the rising cost of living and cold weather will leave millions struggling this winter. National Energy Action says people are facing a choice of either living in unheated homes or racking up debt. It comes as the UK Health Security Agency has issued a cold weather alert for England, with temperatures predicted to drop to as low as -10. The Met Office is warning of up to 4 inches of snow could fall in London and the South East this weekend. A serving Met police officer has been charged with 2 counts of rape. PC Rupert Edwards is alleged to have carried out the offences in Lambeth and Surrey earlier this year whilst off duty. He was first arrested in September and suspended. And the King and Queen Consort have met Hollywood stars Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney today on a visit to Welsh Football Club. The Royals also met and talked with players and other members of staff during a tour of the stadium. This is GB News. We'll bring you more news as it happens. Now it's back to Patrick.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I've got loads coming your way this hour on a variety of different topics. Yeah, there's the Meghan and Harry stuff. We're obviously going to be talking about those remarks, rather incendiary remarks, actually, made by Justin Welby, the Archbishop of Canterbury, in the Lords as well, saying really, essentially, I'm paraphrasing here, but that it's ungodly to deport people. We'll have a big debate on that. But we're starting with Chancellor Jeremy Hunt, who's announced a package of more than 30 reforms to cut red tape and deregulate rules in the city in a bid to turbocharge growth in the economy.
Banks have become much healthier financially since 2008. We put in place a process so that financial issues can be resolved, which we didn't have before. But on that basis, we also want to make sure they can compete with other financial centres, whether it's the United States or Asia. And Scotland is in a fantastic place to do that, and that's why these reforms will make a big difference.
Absolutely nothing cynical whatsoever about doing this announcement in Scotland. Couldn't think of another reason why he might be there. Anyway, these reforms have been described as the biggest shake-up since the wave of deregulation under Margaret Thatcher in the 1980s, as the reforms include relaxations on what bankers can do with their money, requiring regulators to make London more competitive on the international stage. Look, let's get to an expert on all of this stuff to pick through the noise. Chief Economic Advisor at the Centre for Economics and Business Research and former, crucially, Government Advisor, Vicky Price. Thank you very much, Vicky. Right, look, is this panic stations? I was at an IEA event last night, the Institute of Economic Affairs, and there was more than a little bit of annoyance in the room, really, that maybe they dared to dream. They dared to dream, and the Bank of England came and just clobbered them, and the establishment financiers came and clobbered them, and now we've got, you know, archetypal man in a suit, Jeremy Hunt, up in Edinburgh. Well, it would appear making life easier for the bankers again. Do you think the British public will be on board with this?
Well, it remains to be seen. It also remains to be seen how implementable some of the announcements today would be. First of all, we had reforms, yes, 30 reforms, as you suggested, but in a number of cases we're having consultations in order to change things in the future. And of course, the moment you start consultations, you start having everyone sort of writing and objecting. So, for example, there is also, amongst all this, and the intention to modernize the Consumer Credit Act. I mean, that act regulates credit card purchases, personal loans. It's something that's been, with us for decades, about 50 years. So, yes, these things are, perhaps they need to be done. They regulate what building societies do.
Okay.
So they are small things. It's the bigger things that really will make a difference if we really manage to get them through.
Yeah, but can someone just explain the optics of me about, when Liz Truss or Kwasi Kwarteng stood up and said, well, we're going to kind of lower the amount of tax that maybe some people are going to have to pay. And that was like, whoa, you absolute nutters. You can't possibly do something like that. And then I look around at the minute and I think, well, actually, everyone is absolutely skinned. People are struggling to heat or eat. We've got people going on strike left, right and centre. And yesterday I saw the Labour Party cozying up with bankers at an event sponsored by HSBC. And now today I've got Jeremy Hunt there, cozying up to the bankers again. Why is no one making noise about this? They are still just cozying up to the banks and helping to make the wealthier even wealthier, aren't they?
Well, it's a very good point. Now, of course, the regime that we may be moving towards is one of deregulating from what happened after the financial crisis. That, of course, will be good for various banks, although some of the big banks have said that the move towards separating the retail banking and commercial banking activities from investment banking activities, what we called casino banking, in other words, investment banking stuff was the one which was really risky and which caused a lot of the pressures that we had during the financial crisis. Those were ring-fenced. Now we're talking about ring fencing going away, so that ring fencing disappearing over a period of time. The big banks say, actually, we operated rather well under that regime. You were talking about whether they're really pleased or not. The big banks actually find this as a way of preventing smaller ones from coming into the market and taking any share, because the costs are quite considerable. So you've got to look at it that way as well. But I think you're quite right to say that the financial sector right now seems to be certainly advantaged more than others. I mean, just remember what the Rishi Sunak himself had said originally, which was when he was Chancellor. There's a surcharge that was imposed on the banking system, about 8%. So they were paying an extra tax. That surcharge was meant to come down in the next financial year to 3%. Given that tax increases went up everywhere, that surcharge cut is still happening. So the financial sector is being helped that way. Bankers' bonuses, again, they've been removed, or they will be removed. So yes, you're right. I think there is an attempt to cozy up to the financial sector, which of course is worried mainly, and the reason why they're doing it, they're worried about Brexit and the impact that Brexit has had on the standing of the City of London.
But haven't they had enough time to try to get over it now, really? Aren't they just carping on about something that should have been and gone? And also, as well, if they're still going on about the fact that we're struggling to deal with Brexit, well, that is actually the Conservative Party's fault, isn't it? Because they messed around with it for so long, got it all badly wrong, couldn't agree with themselves, biffed off a few leaders in the process. Now we are where we are. You can't blame it on Brexit when, the government's... But it'd be like me crashing my car into a wall and, I don't know, blaming it on the car and not myself.
No, you're right. I mean, one of the things that did not happen in the negotiations we had with Europe was have a proper agreement in terms of what regime here could do under the regulatory regime that we had by comparison to what happens under the regulatory regime in Europe. In other words, having equivalence so that you accept what each of those regimes is doing. That we didn't actually manage to do. So there is going to be a problem if we deregulate in any way to make sure that business does not disappear to Paris or Amsterdam when we're dealing with Europe.
Just very finally, Vicky, how many of those books behind you have you actually read?
Well, the vast majority, actually, because they've been there for since I was... No, they haven't been there, but they're books that I've accumulated through the years. And I'll tell you one little secret.
Go on.
The reason why there's so many is because for a long period of time, I was reviewing something like 10 books a week for the Banker magazine. So a month, rather, for the Banker magazines. And that was over a period of years. So you can well calculate how many I was collecting every year without doing anything at all. Except reading them.
Well, Vicky, I must say I'm incredibly jealous. I mean, the only books I read have got lots and lots of pictures in. Vicky, thank you very much. Former government advisor and an economic guru, Vicky Price there. Right, OK, whizzing you through the latest economic stuff. But back to Back to my level now, which some would argue is the gutter. The first volume of Harry and Meghan's bombshell Netflix docuseries dropped yesterday, and plenty of you, the people, have been letting us know what you really think. So let's have a look at the latest GB News People's Poll. Gosh, that music pumps you up, doesn't it? We asked if you thought that Harry and Meghan should be banned from the King's coronation. Yeah, that's right, we went there, people. We asked whether or not you thought that Harry and Meghan should be banned from the King's coronation. 1 in 4 of you said yes, they should. When asked who you believe represents the values of Britain, over 50% of you said Prince William and Catherine instead of Harry and Meghan. They're only supported by 7% of the country. Plenty to chew over here. And joining me now to dig deep into this is entertainment guru. It's Rebecca Twomey. Thank you very much, Rebecca. Great to have you on the show. Right, OK, so when it comes to the idea that people shouldn't be, Meghan and Harry, I should say, shouldn't be attending the King's coronation, what do you think of this? Do you think that actually the British public are right about that? What do you think has turned them off so much, apart from the fact that Meghan comes across pretty badly?
Well, I actually think this documentary is actually helpful to Meghan. I personally have changed my opinion of Meghan. I've gone full circle. And I think as it goes on, this documentary, as Volume 2 comes out next week, I think public opinion might just sway because we see just how happy Prince Harry is. He is our favourite royal. I think one of the things is that we all need some good positive news. And wouldn't it be amazing if at the King's coronation next year, we saw the whole family reunite again and Meghan and Harry really show a sense of solidarity with their family and perhaps the British people. Now, I know a lot of people weren't happy with the documentary, the Netflix documentary yesterday, and that to me, I understand and I appreciate why they would feel that way. And I think there's a lot to forgive.
Can I just stop you there? Well, you stopped, actually. I didn't have to. But do you think Prince Harry is happy? Because from the little clips I've seen, it looks like he's still going to start blinking for help in Morse code at any moment.
Yes, I just think he's not as au fait and as comfortable in front of the cameras as obviously Meghan, a former actress, is.
But he's been in front of them his whole life. That's part of his problem, isn't it?
Well, no, it's not living it out like a reality show, which some have accused this documentary of being. And I think very much that Harry's quite nervous of how he's perceived, whereas Meghan seems much more comfortable in sort of working towards a certain narrative, and Harry seems to sort of be slightly dragged along with that narrative. But I think it's when he wants.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it'd take much to drag Harry along to anything. Certainly nothing in Las Vegas or indeed a rather fruity Germany-themed costume party, if past evidence is anything to go by. But, look, when it comes to public opinion, do you not think some of it is centred around the fakery of it? Certainly when it comes to British people. So we survey the British public, of course. And, look, there is a vast chasm of difference, not just the Atlantic in between us, when it comes to what's popular in America and what's popular over here. I like to think there's a bit more authenticity over here than your kind of Hollywood sparkle and pizzazz, as it were. And when you are seeing clips of, you know, them in their, supposedly some of their most intimate moments or most upset moments, and you become acutely aware that they're, like, filming it themselves on their own mobile phones, do you not think inherently British people just go, well, this is fake or weird?
I don't think British people think it's fake or weird. I think, like you said, it's been made for a global audience and predominantly an American audience who are very used to the Kardashians. I think Brits are very used to reality TV. We watch an awful lot of it. We are very used to this, talking to the camera and the high emotions around the camera. What I think we all find quite bizarre is this is a couple who wanted privacy. They left the royal family because they wanted to control their own public image and their own privacy. And yet they're filming some, like you said, some very intimate, very personal moments on camera. And then we're very happy to share it for quite a substantial amount of money, when it's a shame when the British taxpayer was paying for them. They didn't want to share anything, and now Netflix are, they're very happy to.
Well, and there we do have a point of agreement, I will say. Yes, 100% on that one. But presumably they wouldn't want to come to the King's coronation anyway, would they? Because if this is a royal family that has got institutional racism at its heart and represents a, you know, racist, slave-based Commonwealth or whatever the next line's going to be, well, presumably they won't want to be a part of that coronation, would they? They would want to endorse it.
Well, firstly, I do think part of this Netflix documentary is very interesting to actually start talking about the racism and the sort of microaggressions in the British press, which I actually think as a journalist I was sort of interested to see that perspective. But they still do love their family. They still speak to a lot of the members of their family. And I think, look, whose family is perfect? We've all got our flaws and issues. And I do think they'll want to be there for the family, but maybe not for the public.
All right. Look, very last question. and I am being a little bit cheeky here, but in your esteemed experience, you know, in the worlds of showbiz and entertainment, if you're being really honest, if I strap you to a lie detector test now, how surprised would you be in 2 years' time if you're writing reports about the fact they've got divorced?
Okay, now I wouldn't wish that on anyone, but yes, that was what I was thinking yesterday. I think if that ever happened, it would be tragic. But I wonder what she would actually say about her marriage to Harry, because there is a narrative with Meghan that I think she'll follow the rest of her life.
Ah, good stuff. All right, OK, look, thank you very much. I thoroughly enjoyed that. There you go. Right, thank you very, very much. Rebecca told me that. Right, well, that was, yes, interesting. What do you make of that? Picking through the results of our People's Poll, which is shock horror, the vast majority of you don't appear to particularly like Harry and Meghan. I mean, I could have told you that, but it's good to do a poll nonetheless. Anyway, you're with me, Patrick Christys on GB News. Coming up, NHS waiting times have hit another record high. Bear in mind that previously there were 7.1 million people waiting for routine NHS care. Can you guess what it is now? I'll tell you after the break. But how do we fix it? What do you think we should do? I'll tell you what won't fix it. Strikes. But anyway, I'll have more on that in a tick.
Hello again, it's Aidan McGivern here from the Met Office. Crisp winter sunshine for many of us today, but it is feeling cold out there and showers are continuing to feed into some locations. Circulating around an area of low pressure in the North Sea, those showers will provide some additional snowfall to northern Scotland and a sleety mixture elsewhere into western parts of the UK. So as we end the day on Friday, further showers building up the snow for northern Scotland, Northern Ireland, southwest Scotland, northwest Wales, as well as northwest England. And increasingly, the southwest will see those showers, rain and sleet to lower levels and around the coast, and some snow inland and over the hills. A widespread freezing night, however. Temperatures in towns and cities, -3 to -5 Celsius. In some shelter spots, even lower than that. And we've got those icy patches first thing because of the cold conditions and the showery nature of the weather in the west and the north. Freezing fog patches in addition to all of that across some central and southern areas. They'll persist into the afternoon in 1 or 2 spots. It will stay cold where that happens, but otherwise 2-3 Celsius typically, and over any upland areas, temperatures staying below freezing. Saturday night then we'll see a widespread frost return and fog patches which will be dense, leading to poor visibilities in places. There'll also be further showers into the north of Scotland and western parts, but also increasingly southeast Scotland could see some snow coming inland. Edinburgh could see a covering by dawn on Sunday, likewise for Dundee and for Perth. But the more significant snow happening over the hills of Scotland and some hillier parts of Wales. So, for example, Snowdonia. Around coast and at lower levels, it's ice, which will be the main hazard on Sunday morning, and some of those freezing fog patches. There's the threat of some more significant snow into the southeast on Sunday and into Monday, but it stays cold everywhere.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Dubes & Co. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Dubes & Co.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Are authorities, are communities doing all they can to combat violent crime? With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Welcome back, everybody. Now, before the break, I was asking you if you could guess, in a rather morbid game of guess, really, what the current NHS waiting time figures are for people waiting for routine treatment. It was previously 7.1 million of us, but now brand new NHS England figures have revealed that it's gone up. It's now yet another record. 7.2 million people awaiting treatments at the end of October. This comes as GPs warn that the health service is at breaking point, and comes at the same time that nurses and ambulance workers are planning to go on strike. So is the NHS on the brink, and what can we actually do about it? Joining me now is Dr Andrew Vallance-Owen, former medical director and chief medical officer of Bupa. So a really good get, as it's called in the business. Thank you very much to have your insights and everything on this. First and foremost now, is the NHS just a sacred cow that actually probably does need slaughtering?
It's certainly a sacred cow, and the system itself, with primary care as a sort of gatekeeper, is a good one, but I'm not sure it needs slaughtering, Patrick. I think it needs radical change in many ways, but I don't think we should slaughter it. I think that would be really bad, and I think the politicians would never get away with it anyway. But,
OK. Well, no, but it's good that you mentioned the politicians there, because unfortunately our health service is just a political football, and it's not as easy as saying, oh, well, the Tories have run it into the ground. I mean, the Tories may well have run it into the ground. They've been in charge the last 12 years, but, I mean, the NHS has always been a little bit of a nightmare, I think, in a variety of different guises. Do you wish, as a medical man, that it was almost just left up to singularly medical experts? Because as long as politicians are using it for political clout, one way or the other, surely the brave decisions are not going to be able to be made. The heartless decisions, maybe, at the time, just the ruthless spreadsheet-based ones.
Yeah. I just want to make a further point on the politics. I mean, I do think that the Department of Health and the civil servants and the policy side should be kept completely distinct from those who run and meant to deliver service in the National Health Service. And maybe you'd have to have a separate minister. It should be run much more like a business with a board, and they should run their own show.
OK.
Yes, I think doctors should be more involved. I mean, for instance, you've just talked about the waiting list. We now have nearly 13,000 people who've been waiting more than 2 years. And one of the things that doctors can do is prioritise on the basis of need. If you just say, well, you've been waiting 2 years, so it's your turn, and you've got an ingrown toenail, I mean, just to take a ludicrous example, clearly they should be helping to assess the people who need it most, the people with cancer and other things where there's pain and disability. So they could really play an important part there in terms of prioritisation, I think.
I do get that. One of the biggest things, though, for people is they need to have faith. I'm talking about patients now. They need to have faith in the health service. I can remember being younger and, depending on which part of the world you're in, to be fair. But sometimes you'd be really hoping that you didn't get ill in that part of the world because you'd be worried about the kind of healthcare that you'd get. I mean, we've all felt that, right? We've all felt that. It used to be that was okay about the idea of me getting ill in this country because I thought that, I'd probably get quite decent treatment. But then I look at it and think, well, 7.2 million people waiting for treatment. And people go, oh, it's routine healthcare. Sorry, it's not always routine healthcare as well, actually, because people are now having to pay to get stents fitted, people are having to pay to get all sorts of what I would regard as being quite serious stuff done. I mean, the NHS now is not really a national health service, is it? I mean, because anyone who's rich don't have to go to Bupa.
Well, I mean, the only thing I'd say about that is that if people can afford to go to the private sector, they are doing the National Health Service a favour. And instead of being criticised for doing it, I think it's really important that...
Yeah, but should as many GPs, sorry to cut across you immediately, but on that exact note, should as many GPs or medical professionals be actually going Bupa? Should they be going private? Because if they were sticking around in the NHS, then maybe, Doreen from number 42 could get a dodgy hip sorted.
Well, and that's a business decision, isn't it? And the GPs, there are very few wholly private GPs, mainly in the sort of centre of London, because people do still have, whatever you say, do have a pretty good faith in their GP, which is why they're so upset when they can't get an appointment with GPs, and there just aren't enough of them. So I think you'll see more of the consultant specialists perhaps moving into the private sector because they are disillusioned in one way or another with the NHS. But we've got to concentrate on delivery. The new money that has been said by the Chancellor, it's got to go to the sharp end, Patrick, instead of getting caught up on all the ways in between with the management layers and everything. That money needs to go directly to the coalface. It's got to go to support particularly the nurses.
So is this the problem? Is this the problem? Because I can't help but feel like we spoke about the NHS being used as political football. It annoys me how many NHS staff appear to be quite political themselves when it comes to the unions and all of this stuff. And I refuse to accept the idea that if you decide to freely, of your own free will, go into a particular industry, I accept that maybe your pay is not what you want it to be, and maybe you should even be paid more. And I'm sure that it's a very messy job and it's a very difficult job. All of that stuff is true. At the same time, for me personally, is it also being true that it is morally repulsive for you to go on strike and, if you're an ambulance worker, for example, and leave someone at the bottom of the stairs or whatever. But actually, should they try to maybe be directing their anger at their managers and the people higher up the pay scale to them and not the government? Because there's a lot of waste going on, is there not?
Yeah, no, there is a lot of waste, and I think you're right, actually. The doctors' union and the nurses' union, they often say that they speak for patients, but actually, we know, don't we, from what they're saying, that they are a vested interest, and their main interest in the BMA, for instance, is about doctors themselves. And it worries me that we don't have a really good patient advocate group. It surprises me. There should be an innovative, dynamic group which stand up for patients who are not people who with the vested interest like doctors, nurses, politicians. And, I would dearly like to see why don't the consumers, they stand up in other industries, in the gas industry?
Well, it's because you get demonised. It's because it is, I'm telling you, it's because you get demonised, because it is bracketed as you're either, I'll say it now, actually, you're either kind of pro-patient or anti-nurse. And no one wants to be anti-nurse. But seriously, this is it. You see it play out on social media. I mean, I made a point where I said, look, when it comes to nurses' strikes, and I'll say it until I'm blue in the face, yeah, absolutely, it's a job I could never do. I've never saved a life. I will probably never save a life on account of the fact that I'd be useless in that situation. I do think that they deserve a pay rise. The 19.2% is mad, if you ask me, but they do deserve a pay rise. But going on strike at things like Alder Hay Children's Hospital or Great Ormond Street, I think is morally wrong. Well, then you copy. Oh, you hate nurses. I'm like, well, no, I don't hate nurses at all. I just think it's wrong. So this is, I think, maybe why there aren't patients groups. But you would like to see maybe what? More patients form, patients assemble.
A more, a national, you've got the Consumers Council, which covers all consumers. But if you think about it, there isn't a patient voice that you can go to who will really say this is not good enough. We have to do something more, whether it's the doctors or the nurses or the staffing, and should be speaking up for patients. They would be a very powerful lobby, given the holy cows we've talked about already of the NHS. And it's a shame we don't have them. But, you know, that's what I was saying.
Yeah.
I agree with you, though. It is morally wrong. And the only defence, I suppose, is that they just feel pushed into it after years and years of austerity, and they seem to have been, you know, more affected perhaps than some other groups, although there are other groups saying the same thing, of course.
Yeah, and there are a lot of contributors.
If we want a good NHS, we've got to have, you know, enough nurses and enough doctors.
Well, this is it, isn't it?
They are leaving. They're finding it cheaper they earn more money stacking shelves in Lidl, which is a terrible thing to be the case, you know, for nurses who are looking after these patients.
Dr. Andrew, can I say, I don't believe we've spoken before. I would dearly love to speak again on this show. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. Thank you very, very much. Dr. Andrew Valence-Owen there, former Medical Director and Chief Medical Officer at Bupa. Really insightful stuff. It's just a potent combination. There's so much going on, isn't there? Nurses and medical staff slaved away during the coronavirus. Yeah, 100%, I get that. You've got inflation, we've got all this stuff, but at the same time, we're all a bit skint at the minute. Anyway, right, we're moving on. Patrick Christys here on GB News. Still to come. It's a hot topic, this. The Archbishop of Canterbury's incendiary comments about the Rwanda policy. So, is it really un-Christian to want to stem the tide of migrants coming over here? Our very own Calvin Robinson will join us to discuss that. But first, it's your latest news headlines.
Thank you, Patrick. It's 5:34. I'm Tatiana Sanchez in the GB Newsroom. The Chancellor has announced plans to overhaul the financial sector, pledging to review and replace hundreds of pages of EU regulations. Dubbed the Edinburgh Reforms, Jeremy Hunt says Brexit has provided a golden opportunity to reshape the rules. More than 30 regulatory changes have been unveiled, including reversing some measures introduced following the 2008 financial crash.
Banks have become much healthier financially since 2008. We put in place a process so that financial issues can be resolved, which we didn't have before. But on that basis, we also want to make sure they can compete with other financial centres, whether it's the United States or Asia. And Scotland is in a fantastic place to do that, and that's why these reforms will make a big difference.
More than 115,000 Royal Mail staff have walked off the job in a new wave of strikes. Thousands gathered at a rally outside Parliament in central London this afternoon, demanding better pay and conditions. Members of the Communication Workers Union will strike again on Sunday, with further action planned throughout the month, including on Christmas Eve. The Prime Minister has been at the launch of a new generation fighter jet in Lincolnshire. Britain will work with Italy and Japan to develop Tempest, designed to replace the Typhoon and expected to take to the skies by 2035. Rishi Sunak says the joint venture aims to create thousands of UK jobs and strengthen security ties. And King Charles and the Queen Consort have visited Wrexham AFC, meeting the football club's Hollywood co-owners, Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney. The Royals also met players and other members of staff during a tour of the stadium. TV, online and DAB+ radio. This is GB News. Here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.2211 and 1.1598 euros. The price of gold is £1,466 and 38 pence per ounce. And the FTSE 100 closed at 7,476 points.
I'm Mark Dolan. Join me at 11 on GB News for Headliners, in which I'll be joined by two of the UK's top comedians discussing tomorrow's papers. If it's an important story, we'll cover it, but we'll have some fun along the way. Headliners, the late-night paper review that won't send you to sleep like the others will. 7 nights a week at 11 p.m. on GB News.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton Tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Lawrence Fox, on GB News. Frank, fun, fearless, and sometimes serious. Much as I love a Friday night punch-up, what I really want is a battle of ideas. I want to look at things differently. I want to hear different voices and engage with your unique experiences. Every Friday at 7 p.m. on GB News.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. B, I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and tune-in apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel. Welcome back, everybody. Now I return to one of, if not the main story of the day, because the Archbishop of Canterbury has waded into the immigration debate once again, claiming that current asylum policies amount to cruelty. Speaking in the House of Lords, the Archbishop Justin Welby warned against the harmful rhetoric on migrants. Here is some of what he had to say.
A compassionate asylum system is one that sees the faces of those in need and listens to their voices. A compassionate system does not mean open borders, but a disposition of generosity and a readiness to welcome those whose need is genuine and where we are able to meet that need. When we fail to challenge the harmful rhetoric that refugees are the cause of this country's ills, then they should be treated as problems, not people, invaders to be tackled and deterred, we deny the essential value and dignity of fellow human beings.
There you go. Well, you might remember, it's not the first time that Justin Welby has intervened on this issue. Earlier this year, he said the Rwanda policy was opposite the nature of God. Well, who better to speak to about all of this than GB News' very own presenter, Father Calvin Robinson. Calvin, thank you very much. I mean, let's get straight down to the chase on this. Is it ungodly to deport people or have them processed offshore?
No, it's not ungodly. In fact, protecting our borders is very godly. Nations and tribes are biblical. God divided the world into nations for a purpose and actually told us to look after our neighbour. And that means, first and foremost, each other. We have to look after ourselves before we can reach out and help other people. And he's forgetting a lot of that. And it's actually, listening to his speech, he mentioned the word global community. It's all a bit of a globalist agenda. And I think he forgets that, he lives in a palace. If he wants to house a few immigrants, we're happy to let him do so. Yeah, I mean, I did wonder whether or not actually maybe there was some element to that, a lack of self-awareness, perhaps. A little bit like a lot of the wealthy people who seem to say, well, I'm sure everyone should pay more tax. You can voluntarily pay more tax if you want to. The Church of England doesn't pay tax, Does it not? No. That's interesting, actually. We've got £10 billion worth of assets. Don't pay tax on it. So do you think that the Church of England should be maybe quite literally putting their money where Justin Welby's mouth is? I think there's an argument to be made there, and especially, like I say, people that live in palaces, literal palaces, with multiple wings, should be housing immigrants before telling us that we need to lower our borders. Borders are essential. It's the government's main job to protect the borders.
I wonder how some of the people feel to learn this or to reread this, which is that the Church of England did cop it a little bit in the wake of the Liverpool asylum seeker bombing. OK? Thankfully, he was the only individual who died in that. It's the guy who strapped a suicide vest, a homemade suicide vest to himself and detonated it outside what I believe is Europe's largest maternity hospital. Well, supposedly the Church of England was almost running a little bit of a pseudo-scheme which would allow people who'd been refused asylum to convert to Christianity, to be able to say they would be persecuted in their own country on grounds of their Christian faith. Some people at the time called it a racket.
Yes. It is a racket, and I have evidence that it's going on. I know of priests that have done this, and it's a great shame because they are, it's sacrilege, really, because baptism is a sacrament, and it's something that gives you membership into Christ's body, into his church. It shouldn't be used as a ticket to get someone entry into a country illegally. It shouldn't be said, if we give you a baptism, if you say you're Christian, it will help on your application. You can resubmit your asylum claim. That is illegal, and it's immoral, and I know priests that have been doing that, and I called it out at the time, actually, and got in a lot of trouble for it.
Now, it's an interesting one, really, because you are obviously a man of God, yes, yeah. And then you give out views, of course. I mean, you're paid to do it here as well, but you want to do it anyway. Of course you do. Should religion and religious figures get involved in political discussions? So should the likes of Welby be getting involved when it comes to this stuff?
Yeah, this is where I do disagree with a lot of our viewers. I do think they should be involved in politics, just not party politics. I don't think you can separate the faith from politics because it's very political. It's telling people essentially how to live your life, how to live a good life. There's no way to do that without being political.
OK, so you would defend his right to say what he said. You just disagree with it.
Yeah, the problem is I don't think he comes from a biblical perspective. I think he comes from a liberal globalist perspective, and that's very troubling because everything I've heard him say in the House of Lords today has been globalism this, globalism that, Britain bad, British people bad. That is unhelpful.
Well, kind of on that point, actually, do you think he's forgetting potentially who he's here to represent, which, yes, people might argue is humanity as a whole, don't get me wrong, but it's the Church of England, and there are a lot of English people who are currently homeless. And what he's talking about potentially there is housing people who've just come across the channel in various hotels at the taxpayer's expense. Would he do better to maybe focus on charity starting at home?
Yeah, because he assumes that everyone coming over the border is doing so because they're fleeing persecution, and we know that's not true. The stats suggest that at least half of people coming over the border are doing so for economic purposes, not fleeing persecution or warfare or anything like that. We know that a lot of people are coming from Albania, as an example, and a lot of people are coming from France, which is a safe country. So he's assuming, first and foremost, that people are needing to come here. But then, on the other hand, he's also neglecting the homeless people, as you mentioned. We've got veterans of this country who cannot afford to get a house, never mind heat their house this winter. And we're forgetting about all of those people and neglecting them. His first priority should be the English people, the British people, helping them. And then, of course, we extend our hand in foreign aid. As we do, we contribute a lot to foreign aid around the world. I think we're the 4th largest contributors of foreign aid around the world. That is no insignificant amount of money.
No, it's not. Now, Calvin, I actually believe I was informed earlier on that you were name-checked.
Oh, gosh.
You were name-checked during this discussion in the House of Lords. It was a discussion on immigration we've been referencing there. Yes, so GBNews' presenter, our very own Father Calvin Robinson, was mentioned by Lord Andrew Robertson. Let's just take it away.
There's another question. Why was Calvin Robinson kicked out as an ordinary? Now, I don't know him. He may be very unsuitable, but his story is coming out. It's not good. Now,
Go on, then.
No, he makes a good point. I still don't know why I was kicked out, why I was
just inform people. Go on. What happened?
Well, there were a few conversations. So I felt called to the priesthood. I asked the church if they thought I was called to the priesthood. They said, yes, we feel you are called to the priesthood. They paid for me to go to Oxford for theological training, spent 2 years in Oxford, studied hard, got great grades. At the end of my course, when I was supposed to be sent into a parish in London, the Bishop of London said, we're going to hold off on this. I said, OK, how long or why? And no answers came back. And essentially, I had a sit-down conversation with her, and she said, you can't be saying things like the church is not institutionally racist. I said, I don't feel it is. I feel there are individuals that are racist, as with any institution. They should be addressed. However, I can't see that the church as itself is systemically racist. She said, I can tell you as a white woman, it is. And then I realised that we're looking at the world from 2 completely different views. and we were never going to find common ground in this area. And essentially, this is one of the reasons I believe that I wasn't ordained. But then, this is back in June. I'm over that now. That was a long time ago. And I'm very comfortable and happy. I've got my parish in northwest London. I've been ordained a deacon, still in the Anglican Church. I'm actually in communion with 80% of Anglicans around the world. So it's just a minority in England that I'm not in communion with. However, him raising it is a very good point. It has sparked me to think, what if there are people that don't have a platform like I do, that are conservative in their theology or their politics?
I would also argue just parishioners or churchgoers or normal people in any walk of life. I can't help but wonder whether or not, and I am Christian myself, by the way, so I'm saying this is a genuine point. And I'm not trying to make any religious point here. I think it's important that people get where I'm coming from with it. It is important that the church, any church, or any religious sect, I suppose, welcomes as many people as possible. And I get that, but is it sending out a message that if you believe that borders are a good thing, that maybe you're not welcome in the Church of England? I don't know. Because I imagine there's a lot of people who go to church every single Sunday or whatever who do think that what's going on in the Channel is a bit ridiculous.
Yeah, and we see this. The church is using the words welcoming and inclusive more and more, but it means it's becoming more and more exclusive, because normal British folk, and you'll see in the stats that more people in the Church of England voted for Brexit than people in the rest of the country, actually.
Is that true?
Yes, it is. And more people in the Church of England are, from our kind of thought process that we should be looking after our neighbour, but we should also be protecting people, making sure homeless and vets are looked after and all this kind of stuff. Whereas the church wants to address trans issues and really, really minority issues that don't affect the vast majority and make those the biggest conversation of the day. We saw a couple of weeks ago, Trinity Church in Cambridge said that Jesus might have been trans. And
that was
of course, this is nonsense. But the Archbishop of Canterbury, the Archbishop of York do not stand up and say, no, this is untrue. Christ was a man. He was man incarnate. That is in the scriptures. So they're not standing up for the faith. And so I think a lot of people feel left behind.
Calvin, thank you very much.
Anytime.
As ever, Calvin Robinson there, Father Calvin Robinson, our very own. Right, lots of you have been getting in touch with your thoughts on the Archbishop's remarks. If you are just joining us, where have you been? But it is the fact that basically Archbishop Justin Welby essentially saying that it was, I'm paraphrasing here, but ungodly, unchristian and not nice and cruel to essentially deport anyone as far as I could tell. Anyway, Jill says, just Google how much land the Church of England owns. Perhaps if Welby is so concerned about the illegal immigrants, he should donate some land for the building of homes for them, or rent out some of the church's property. Another case of hypocrisy. I mean, I can't help but feel like maybe Jill's got a point there, really. There is land there. Maybe you could house people on it. Maybe you could use some of the church's wealth or assets to raise money to help do that and house these people so that local communities maybe, who don't have a say in the matter, by the way, about migrant hotels, not just one, not just two, but three migrant hotels in some communities, at the expense of the local taxpayer, at the expense of local public services. Maybe, just maybe, the church could do a bit more to help out with all of that. Anyway, Madeline says, the church here is not particularly bothered about our homeless already living on the streets. Well, Madeline, I'm just going to counter that slightly, because it would be ludicrous to suggest, wouldn't it, as I'm sure you're not making in such black and white terms, Madeline, but it would be totally ludicrous to suggest that the church as a whole doesn't care at all about homeless people. They do a lot of good work. It's just whether or not they're right about this issue, which is that it's whether or not it's cruel to allow people to be processed in Rwanda, for example. And I did think that Calvin Robinson made a good point earlier. He says the assumption that it's cruel is based around the fact that every single person coming here is indeed a genuine asylum seeker or a genuine refugee, whereas in reality that's not the case. And therefore, that means that, it just diminishes. Sorry if I lost my train of thought there slightly. It's just because, with good reason, by the way, as you're about to find out, I've just had it in my ear, Croatia have beaten Brazil in the World Cup. So there we go, on penalties in the quarter-final, and there's some live pictures that you can see of, I'm assuming, Croatia, Croatian fans, wherever in the world they may be, and they are extremely happy about the fact that their team has beaten Brazil. So Brazil, you know what? It might actually be coming home. If England can get through France tomorrow, which I hope they really do, then actually, realistically, we've got a cracking chance. Then one of the Netherlands and Argentina are going to knock each other out, and that game is later on tonight. So whichever one of those is out, that's great. Realistically, then, it's England's, isn't it? It's England's. He says. But anyway, we'll have to wait and see. Yes, OK, it's in Zagreb, by the way, those images. So there you go. That's it. I mean, I thought it was Leicester Square for a minute, but no, alas. Anyway, right, look, thank you very much, everybody who's been obviously getting in touch and tuning in throughout the course of this show, whether it's been online or it's been whatever. GBViews at gbnews.uk has popped off today. Thank you very much, everybody. But somebody else who will be popping off over the course of the next hour is Michelle Dewberry, Jubes & Co. here in the studio. Thank you very much. Michelle, what's coming up? I imagine you'll be leading on the fact that Croatia have beaten Brazil.
Oh, yeah, definitely. In your dreams, I might be leading on that, but not in reality, Patrick, unfortunately. I'll tell you what I'm not doing tonight as well. I'm not doing any Harry and Meghan. It's the H&M freezer, and I'm happy about that. I do want to talk a lot about strikes, though. Last week, pretty much all of my viewers were absolutely behind the strikers, backing them all the way. A week on, we've had more strikes happen and announced. I'm pondering, are people still backing the strikers? Are there any lines by which people say, OK, no, that's going a little bit too far? What do we all make as well to the army having to step in and step up? Is that the right course of action? I also want to ponder the fact, I can't help but notice, Patrick, so many places now are popping up cashless. You cannot spend your cold, hard cash. We've all just kind of shrugged and gone, OK, yeah, fair enough. But is it fair enough? It's actually legal in this country to not accept cash. But should that be the case? I don't actually think it should. And the police, get this, the police force have gone onto social media to ask parents to stop telling kids, you know, if you're naughty, the police will come and take you away. Apparently that's not good for community relations. Well, it made me laugh because I've got to say I'll definitely be using that line on my kid, I can tell you. But apparently kids shouldn't fear the police. None of us should. We should respect the police and see them essentially as one of us. Really?
That is fantastic, that. If you're naughty, the police come and take you away.
It's a great line.
I used to live relatively near to a police station, and I was particularly naughty, which comes as no shock to anyone, really. I was quite naughty one day, and my mum threatened to call the police. She said, I'm going downstairs now, I'm calling the police. And at that moment, sirens were going past outside. I thought, the police are actually here to take me away. But anyway, there we go. Michelle, thank you very much. I'm sure it'll be a great show. Michelle Dewberry there with Jubes & Co. She will be there in just a matter of moments. Thank you very much, everybody who's tuned in to me, not just today, but of course all week. I am off now. I'll see you again on Monday at 3 p.m. Have a fantastic weekend, and hopefully we can all enjoy England thumping the French. I'll see you in a bit.
Hello, it's Aidan McGivern here from the Met Office. It stays cold into the weekend. Ice, snow and fog for some, but for many others, clear skies by night and crisp winter sunshine by day. We've still got cold air in place across the UK, and we've still got low pressure in the North Sea, helping to maintain some showers. But it's mainly windward coasts where we'll see those showers, so that means that for Friday night it's northern Scotland, into parts of Northern Ireland, Western England and Wales. The showers at coastal level will be around rain and sleet, perhaps some hail, but inland and with any elevation falling as snow, covering for Snowdonia, for example, for higher parts of Cumbria, and certainly a lot of snow building up for northern